Welcome to the Deep Sleep Science Channel. Tonight, we're drifting gently into the world of mysterious creatures, where hidden animals move through deep oceans, silent caves, and dark forests far from everyday sight. Before you settle in completely, take a soft moment to like the video, subscribe, or leave a quiet comment, and then let your mind simply wander. One of the most astonishing things in all of zoology is that giant squid are among the largest invertebrates on Earth. That means an animal with no backbone at all can still grow to a size that feels almost legendary. When most people think of very large animals, they imagine whales, elephants, or other creatures with skeletons and sturdy bones. But the giant squid shows that the ocean can produce enormous bodies built in a completely different way, with soft tissues, muscular arms, and a body plan more delicate than many land animals, yet still capable of talca, reaching extraordinary size. The largest scientifically recorded giant squid measured almost 43 feet long, which is a length that can be hard to picture calmly. It means a single deep-sea animal can stretch longer than many buses are wide, with much of that length flowing outward in arms and feeding tentacles. Even if the body itself is not enormous in the same way as a whale, the full animal becomes immense when fully extended. This is one reason giant squid have held such a powerful place in human imagination for so long. They are not just large for squid. They are large enough to seem almost unreal. Even a more conservative estimate is still remarkable, because full-grown giant squid can reach at least about 33 feet in length. That is still an enormous animal by any standard, especially when it lives far below the familiar surface world. A creature that long, moving through near darkness, belongs to a scale that most people rarely think about when they imagine marine life. It reminds us that the ocean does not reserve great size only for the animals we easily know. It also hides long-bodied hunters whose dimensions feel more like folklore, until science quietly confirms them. Giant squid are often used as an example of abyssal gigantism, which is the tendency for some deep-sea animals to grow unusually large. Scientists are still exploring why this happens in certain deep environments, but the pattern itself is very real. In the deep sea, strange body sizes appear again and again, as if the rules shift in darkness. The giant squid has become one of the best-known symbols of this idea, because it combines the deep ocean's secrecy with a body that grows far beyond what many people expect from an invertebrate. Their eyes are enormous, and this is not just a dramatic detail. In deep water, light is scarce, weak, and precious, so having very large eyes can make an enormous difference. These eyes help giant squid detect faint light and subtle movement in an environment where visibility is limited and shadows matter. In a place where survival may depend on noticing the approach of prey or the outline of a predator in near darkness, the ability to gather every possible trace of light becomes a powerful advantage. Their huge eyes are one of the clearest signs that they belong to a world where vision must stretch to its limit. The fact that giant squid can remain genuinely elusive, even in the modern age, is deeply awe-inspiring. Rare live footage has made them less mythical than they once were, but they are still hard to study and hard to see. This is not because they are tiny, delicate, or limited to some impossibly small habitat. It is because the deep sea is so vast and so difficult for humans to explore that even a very large predator can pass most of its life almost completely unseen. That idea alone gives the giant squid a quiet power. It lives at a scale big enough to impress us, but in a place hidden enough to keep its mystery. Much of what scientists know about giant squid has come not from watching them alive in great detail, but from carcasses, from hard beaks found in predator stomachs, and from rare deep-sea observations. That means the scientific picture was built gradually, piece by piece, from traces and fragments. Instead of having a long history of easy, direct observation, researchers had to learn from remains, clues, and occasional encounters. There is something very striking about that. One of the ocean's largest invertebrates has long been known more by evidence of its existence than by ordinary repeated viewing. One reason giant squid remained mysterious for so long is that the deep ocean is vastly larger than the parts of the planet humans can routinely observe. Even with advanced submarines, remote vehicles, cameras, and deep-sea equipment, most of that world remains difficult to reach and difficult to monitor. So the mystery of the giant squid is not only about the animal itself, it is also about the setting. The ocean is so large, so layered, and so inaccessible that it can hide even very large creatures in plain reality, not fantasy. There is something quietly humbling in the idea that such a huge predator can remain hard to study. It reminds us how little of the deep ocean humans regularly see. We live on a planet whose surface seems mapped and familiar, and yet beneath that comfort lies a place spacious enough to conceal animals of astonishing size and form. The giant squid is one of the clearest examples of how our knowledge is still partial, especially when the subject lives far below sunlight and far beyond routine human reach. Big-fin squid are among the strangest-looking cephalopods ever filmed. Even in a group already famous for unusual shapes, intelligence, and alien-like forms, big-fin squid stand apart. Their silhouette is so unfamiliar that many people, seeing one for the first time, can hardly place it within the category of squid at all. They look less like streamlined swimmers and more like something designed specifically to unsettle expectations, with fins that appear oversized and appendages that seem impossibly drawn out into the darkness. Their huge fins and extremely long appendages give them an eerie outline that remains memorable long after the footage ends. In the dark water, their shape can appear almost architectural, as though the animal was suspended between creature and structure. This is one reason they fascinate viewers so strongly. The deep sea already feels remote and abstract, and then a big-finned squid appears, moving slowly in a form that seems to belong to another set of biological rules. It is a living reminder that real animals can still surprise the eye as completely as imagined monsters once did. The largest known big-finned squid recorded by researchers measured about 4 meters long, and that size becomes even more impressive when you realize how much of it comes from stretched arms and tentacles. It is not merely a compact animal scaled up. It is an animal whose body plan itself emphasizes length and reach. A creature like that, hanging in black water, seems to turn space itself into part of its presence. Its body is not only big, it is extended, elongated, and difficult to take in all at once. Almost all of that length in a big-finned squid comes from the arms and tentacles rather than the body. This creates a very unusual visual impression. Instead of a large central form with short limbs, the animal seems to disperse itself outward, becoming long and sparse and almost skeletal in silhouette. That is part of what makes it so mysterious. It occupies a large volume of water in a way that feels unlike most familiar animals. Its proportions alone make it seem dreamlike, even though it is a real and documented creature. Some deep-sea videos show big-finned squid hanging almost motionless in the water. That stillness is part of their strange beauty. Many animals impress us through speed, force, or obvious action, but the big-finned squid can seem almost suspended between movement and rest. In darkness, stillness can be just as powerful as motion. It can turn a living animal into something that looks more like a delicate instrument placed in the water than a hunter moving through it. That quiet pose is one reason the species leaves such a strong impression. Their posture can make them look less like active hunters and more like drifting structures. It is a beautiful example of how unfamiliar life can become in the deep sea. When an animal does not move according to patterns we instinctively recognize, our minds begin searching for comparisons outside ordinary biology. That is why people compare these squid to machines, puppets, or floating frameworks. Their mystery is not only in what they are doing, but in how completely their shape resists immediate understanding. Few animals fit the phrase mysterious creature better than a big-finned squid drifting through black water on impossibly long arms. The image feels powerful because it combines emptiness, scale, and silence. The surrounding darkness offers no easy reference point, so the animal seems to emerge from nowhere and belong nowhere familiar. In that kind of setting, biology itself begins to feel uncanny. The big-finned squid does not need exaggeration. Its reality is already strange enough. The vampire squid has one of the most dramatic scientific names in zoology, Vampiroteuthis infernales, which means vampire squid from hell. That name sounds fierce, theatrical, and almost mythological. Yet it belongs to an animal whose actual life is much quieter than the name suggests. The contrast is part of what makes it so memorable. It sounds like a monster from a tale, but in reality, it is a carefully adapted deep-sea survivor, built for a low-energy existence in a dim and difficult world. Despite that dramatic name, vampire squid do not suck blood. This is one of the loveliest examples of how animal names can mislead the imagination. People often expect a fearsome predator, yet the truth is far gentler. The vampire squid survives not by attacking large animals, but by gathering drifting food from the deep. It is mysterious, yes, but not because it behaves like a horror story. It is mysterious because it has found an elegant way to live in a harsh place where food and oxygen are both limited. Vampire squid mainly feed on drifting organic material known as marine snow. This falling material includes tiny bits of dead organisms, waste, mucus, and other particles that slowly descend through the water column. To us it may not sound grand, but in the deep ocean, this steady shower of matter is an important source of life. The vampire squid has adapted to use that quiet rain of food efficiently. Instead of chasing large prey with speed, it gathers nourishment from what the upper ocean releases downward, almost as though it were living beneath a slow and endless snowfall. They use two long, sticky filaments to collect that falling food. These filaments are especially interesting because they allow the animal to feed in a calm and economical way. Rather than constantly swimming, chasing, and spending energy, the vampire squid can reach into the surrounding water and gather what is there. In the deep sea, where resources are scarce and every bit of energy matters, this method makes great sense. It is a feeding strategy shaped not by spectacle, but by patience. Vampire squid are adapted to low-oxygen deep-sea habitats, where many other active animals would struggle to survive. This is one of their most remarkable qualities. A place that would be stressful or impossible for many creatures becomes normal for them. Their bodies and behavior are tuned to an environment that limits activity and rewards efficiency. That means the vampire squid does not merely tolerate a difficult habitat. It belongs to one of the ocean's most challenging settings and manages to live there with a kind of quiet specialization. Giant squid are creatures of depth, and they usually live so far down in the ocean that even very large individuals can stay hidden from people for most of their lives. This tells us something important about scale in the natural world. On land, very large animals are hard to miss, but in the ocean, depth changes that completely. A huge body can vanish into a vertical world of darkness, currents, and distance. So the giant squid's secrecy is not a contradiction of its size. It is a consequence of the vast hidden space it inhabits. The species most often referred to as the giant squid is called Architeuthis ducks. Giving a creature a scientific name helps place it inside the ordered language of biology, but the name does not erase the wonder around it. In many ways, Architeuthis dux represents the meeting point between careful classification and enduring mystery. Science can identify it, compare it, and study its anatomy, yet the experience of the animal itself still feels larger than the label. A giant squid's arms and feeding tentacles are lined with powerful suckers. These suckers are not small or decorative features. They are functional gripping structures that help the animal seize prey and hold on in a world where bodies are slippery, movement is fast, and encounters may be brief. In a deep-sea predator, gripping ability matters. The suckers turn the long limbs into tools of control, allowing the squid to convert reach into capture. Those suckers can leave circular scars on animals that struggle against them, including sperm whales. That fact gives a rare glimpse into deep ocean conflict. Since people do not often witness these encounters directly, such scars become part of the record, physical signs of struggle between enormous hunters and prey or predators in the dark. A scar on a whale can become a quiet message from the deep, evidence of a meeting humans never saw, but can still understand. Sperm whales are believed to be one of the giant squid's main predators. This relationship adds another layer of scale and mystery. One of the few animals capable of hunting giant squid is itself a deep-diving giant, able to descend into darkness where few mammals can travel. So when we think of giant squid, we are also thinking of a hidden food web involving some of the ocean's most extraordinary animals. Deep below the surface, immense predators meet in conditions that humans can barely visit. Giant squid have a streamlined body that helps them move through the water column. This smooth shape matters because in water, movement is shaped by drag, resistance, and flow. A streamlined body lets the squid move more efficiently, whether rising, turning, or approaching prey. It shows that even a seemingly strange animal follows clear physical principles. Mystery and engineering often exist together in biology, and the giant squid is a beautiful example of that balance. Their beak is hard and sharp, like that of other cephalopods. Hidden at the center of the arms, it serves as a very practical feeding tool. Once prey is brought inward, the beak helps tear and process it. In a soft-bodied animal, a hard structure like this becomes especially important. It is a reminder that even creatures with flowing limbs and gelatinous tissues often depend on small, strong anatomical parts to survive. The mantle of a giant squid contains strong muscle used in jet propulsion. This muscular structure allows the animal to move by forcing water out and pushing itself through the ocean. Jet propulsion is one of the elegant recurring solutions in cephalopod biology. It is not always the most energy-efficient way to travel over long distances, but it allows quick bursts and controlled movement when needed. Inside the mystery of the giant squid is a very real mechanical system, built from muscle and water. Giant squid have 2 longer feeding tentacles in addition to 8 arms. This arrangement is important because it separates reaching from holding. The longer tentacles help seize prey at a distance, while the arms assist in controlling and bringing that prey toward the mouth. For people unfamiliar with cephalopods, this difference can be easy to miss, but it is central to how these animals are built. The body is organized for capture in layers, not just in simple symmetry. Their tentacle clubs help seize prey before it is brought toward the mouth. These widened ends are specialized for the moment of contact, the instant when reach becomes control. In the deep ocean, a failed grab may waste energy and lose a rare opportunity. So the ability to secure prey efficiently matters. The tentacle club is one of those beautiful examples of how animal anatomy refines itself around a very specific job. Most of the giant squid's total length comes from the arms and tentacles rather than the main body. This changes the way we should picture the animal. It is not like a thick-bodied giant fish or mammal. Its great size is extended through flexible appendages that lengthen its presence dramatically. That makes it seem even more unusual, because its hugeness is not only mass. It is reach, spread, and flowing dimension. The vampire squid's slow lifestyle matches the scarce food and limited oxygen of its environment. In many habitats, speed and constant activity are useful. In the deep sea, however, survival may depend more on restraint than on haste. A slow-moving animal can conserve energy and remain suited to a world where meals are uncertain and oxygen can be in short supply. The vampire squid is calm not by accident, but because its whole way of life has been shaped by the quiet demands of depth. Vampire squid have a cloak-like webbing stretched between their arms. This webbing is one of the reasons they look so striking and unusual. It gives the animal a shape that appears more theatrical than many squids, as if it carries its own dark mantle through the water. But this form is not only visually memorable, it also plays a role in defense and presentation, helping the animal change its profile in ways that may confuse threats. They possess light-producing organs called photophores. In the dark sea, producing light can be as important as seeing it. Photophores allow animals to create signals, diversions, or camouflage in a place where natural light is limited. For the vampire squid, light becomes part of survival itself. Instead of relying on speed or strength alone, it can use flashes and glows as tools in a world where brightness stands out sharply against the black background. Vampire squid have several different kinds of light organs used in their displays. That means their glow is not a simple single system, but a more varied toolkit. Different light-producing areas can create different effects, and that complexity suggests just how important controlled illumination is in the deep ocean. When an animal evolves multiple ways to produce light, it tells us that light is doing real work there, not merely adding beauty. When threatened, vampire squid can release glowing mucus rather than ink. This is a remarkable defensive strategy. In shallower cephalopods, dark ink can create confusion, but in deep water, a cloud of glowing material may be more useful. It can distract a predator, overwhelm its senses, or redirect attention just long enough for escape. It is a brilliant example of how a familiar cephalopod idea has been reshaped to suit a very different environment. The vampire squid's soft body is built more for endurance in the deep than for speed. This design makes perfect sense once we stop imagining every squid as a fast, aggressive hunter. In the low-energy world it inhabits, the body does not need to be optimized for rapid pursuit. It needs to function steadily, efficiently, and with as little wasted effort as possible. There is something deeply elegant in that kind of adaptation. It is a form of survival based on patience. Their dark red or black coloration helps them disappear in dim water. In the deep sea, colors behave differently because red light is absorbed quickly and does not travel far. So an animal that is red can become effectively dark or invisible at depth. This means the vampire squid's color is not a dramatic display for others to admire. It is a practical solution to a world where being overlooked can mean staying alive. In deep water, red often functions almost like black, because red wavelengths vanish quickly with depth. This is one of those beautiful scientific details that reveals how strange the ocean really is. A color we see as vivid near the surface changes meaning as light changes around it. The deep sea rewrites appearance. It turns red into concealment and makes the visual world different from the one our surface eyes are used to. Vampire squid can invert their webbed arms over the body in a defensive posture sometimes called the pineapple posture. The name sounds almost playful, but the behavior is a serious survival tool. By drawing the webbing over itself, the animal changes its shape and protects more delicate parts. In the deep, where there may be little warning before danger arrives, even a brief moment of altered form can matter. Defense is not always about fleeing. Sometimes it is about becoming something harder to attack. Their large eyes help vampire squid detect very faint light. Just as with giant squid, vision in darkness becomes a matter of sensitivity. In the deep ocean, even the smallest trace of light may carry valuable information, whether from distant bioluminescence, movement, or danger. Large eyes are a repeated answer to that problem, and in the vampire squid they help complete a body built for awareness in dim, quiet space. Rather than being a classic squid in the ordinary sense, vampire squid occupy an unusual branch of the cephalopod family that lies closer to octopuses. This makes them even more interesting from an evolutionary point of view. Their appearance may suggest one familiar category, but their deeper relationships tell a more unusual story. Nature often refuses our simplest boxes, and the vampire squid is a gentle reminder that classification can become more fascinating the closer we look. Their glowing displays likely work as defense against predators. In darkness, confusion can be powerful. A sudden light may distract, startle, or make it harder for a predator to track the true body of the animal. That means the vampire squid uses the deep sea's visual emptiness almost like a stage, where even a small display becomes meaningful against black water. Light here is not decoration. It is strategy. The tips of a vampire squid's arms can shine with blue light. This is a particularly striking detail because it gives the animal fine-scale control over where light appears. Instead of simply glowing all over, it can produce illumination at specific points. In the dark sea, a pinpoint of blue can be startlingly visible. That tiny sparkle on the edge of a limb becomes part of the animal's language of survival. In deep water, producing a brief, confusing light show may be more useful than trying to outrun a predator. This tells us a great deal about life in that environment. Speed is not always the best answer. When darkness is nearly complete, information itself becomes the battlefield. If a predator loses track of shape, motion, or direction for even a moment, that may be enough. The vampire squid survives not by overwhelming the deep sea, but by understanding it. The mismatch between the vampire squid's frightening name and its gentle feeding style is one of the reasons it fascinates so many people. We expect menace and discover subtlety instead. That contrast leaves a lasting impression because it shows how often the real natural world is stranger and calmer than our imaginations first assume. Sometimes the most mysterious creatures are not the ones that behave like monsters, but the ones that quietly overturn our expectations. Big-finned squid are so rarely seen that scientists still know relatively little about their behavior. In a time when people can watch distant planets, zoom in on cells, and track storms from space, it is remarkable that such a large and visually unforgettable animal can still remain behaviorally obscure. That ignorance is not due to lack of interest. It is due to the difficulty of the environment itself. The animal lives where observation is expensive, brief, and hard-won. Most observations of big-finned squid have come from remotely operated vehicles rather than from nets. This matters because it shows how modern technology has changed our understanding of mysterious animals. Traditional collection methods can miss fragile or elusive creatures, especially in the deep sea. A camera, however, can reveal posture, motion, and shape without destroying the animal. In that way, the big-finned squid is partly a discovery of optics and engineering as much as one of zoology. Their long, trailing appendages may help them sense or trap prey in the darkness. Although many details are still uncertain, this possibility fits beautifully with their unusual form. In a place where contact may come before clear sight, an extended reach can become a way of sampling the surrounding water. Their limbs turn distance into opportunity. Instead of compressing the body into speed, the animal stretches itself outward into sensitivity and capture. The body of a big-finned squid is comparatively compact for such a long animal. This contrast is part of what makes it look so uncanny. The center seems almost modest, while the appendages extend the animal into a much larger presence. It is as if the creature has chosen not to become massive, but to become distributed. Their body plan gives it a kind of geometric mystery that few other marine animals share. Their fins are oversized relative to the mantle, which helps explain the name, big fin. Yet the name, the lacurate, hardly prepares a viewer for the effect of seeing the animal itself. Those fins do more than make the animal identifiable. They contribute to a silhouette that feels almost ceremonial in the dark, adding breadth near the top, while the appendages descend below. The result is an animal whose proportions seem designed to linger in memory. Barrel-eye fish live in the ocean's twilight to midnight zones, which means they spend their lives in a part of the sea where sunlight becomes very weak and then nearly disappears. This is not the bright, colorful ocean most people imagine near coral reefs or beaches. It is a dim, cold, and quiet place where animals often depend on unusual body designs to survive. The barrel-eye belongs perfectly to that world. It is a fish shaped by darkness, by limited visibility, and by the strange visual challenges of deep water. They are commonly found around 600 to 800 meters deep, a range where the ocean already feels very far removed from everyday human experience. At those depths, pressure is immense, temperatures are low, and sunlight is only a faint memory from far above. A fish living there cannot rely on the same strategies used by shallow water species. Every detail of its body must make sense in the place where shadows, silhouettes, and bioluminescent flashes may matter more than bright color or speed. The barrel-eye is one of the clearest examples of a fish designed for this hidden layer of the sea. The most famous feature of the barrel-eye is its transparent, fluid-filled head shield. At first glance, this seems almost impossible, because most people do not expect a vertebrate to have a head that looks like a clear dome. But this structure is real, and it protects the fish's delicate eyes while still allowing them to function. In a way, the transparent shield turns the fish's head into a kind of window. It is one of those rare cases in nature where the anatomy feels almost futuristic, even though it evolved naturally in the deep sea. Its tubular eyes are extremely sensitive to light, which is exactly what a deep-sea fish needs in such a dark habitat. In waters where very little sunlight remains, even tiny amounts of light can carry useful information. A faint glow from prey, a shadow passing overhead, or a small flash in the distance may all matter. The barrel-eye's eyes are not built for colorful, wide-angle scenery. They are built for collecting precious traces of light in a place where almost everything is dim. For a long time, scientists thought the eyes of the barrel-eye were fixed permanently upward. This made sense at first, because preserved specimens seemed to show a fish built to stare only toward the faint light above. But preserved bodies do not always reveal the full story of how a living animal behaves. Sometimes soft tissues shift, collapse, or lose their true position after death. So the earlier interpretation was understandable, even if it turned out to be incomplete. Later observations showed that the eyes can rotate forward when the fish feeds. This discovery changed the way scientists understood the animal. Instead of being locked into one viewing direction, the barrel-eye turned out to have a more flexible visual system than people once believed. Looking upward helps it scan for silhouettes or drifting prey above, while rotating forward helps when the moment comes to actually capture food. This is a beautiful example of how live observation can completely reshape scientific understanding. The green structures visible through the transparent head are actually the eyes. This can be confusing because when most people first see the fish, they often assume the dark spots on the front must be the eyes. But the real eyes sit inside the clear dome, facing upward or forward, depending on what the fish is doing. Once you know this, the whole animal starts to make more sense. The strange face is not random. It is the result of a deep-sea visual system organized in a very unusual way. The two dark spots that look like eyes are really olfactory organs called nares. In other words, what seems like a familiar face is partly an illusion. The fish's sensory anatomy is arranged differently from what people expect, and that is one reason it feels so mysterious. The nares are related to smell, not sight. So the front of the head includes sensory equipment for interpreting the surrounding water, but not in the simple face pattern our brains instinctively look for. Looking upward helps the barrel eye spot the silhouettes of prey above it. In the deep ocean, prey may appear as a darker shape against the faint light coming down from the surface. This is a common visual principle in dim marine environments. Even when light is weak, something passing between the fish and that faint brightness can stand out. So the barrel eye's upward-looking vision is a very clever way of turning limited light into useful information about what might be floating or moving overhead. Turning the eyes forward helps when the fish actually grabs food. Detecting prey and capturing prey are not always the same problem, so it makes sense that the fish uses different viewing angles for different moments. First, it needs to notice something above. Then it needs to track and approach it more directly. The rotating eyes allow the fish to shift from searching mode to feeding mode. It is a precise solution to the visual demands of deep-sea hunting. Scientists think barrelies may hover beneath siphonophores and steal food from their tentacles. If true, this would make the fish not only a hunter, but also an opportunistic thief. Siphonophores are drifting colonial animals with stinging tentacles that capture prey, and the barrel eye may exploit that system by taking advantage of their work. In the deep sea, where food can be hard to find, using another creature's capture system as an opportunity makes very good ecological sense. Its transparent head shield may help protect the eyes from stinging cells when it approaches siphonophores. This idea is especially elegant because it connects one strange feature directly to a likely ecological challenge. If the fish moves near stinging tentacles, its delicate eyes would need protection. A clear shield allows the fish to keep its visual ability while also reducing the risk of injury. The deep sea often rewards designs that seem strange until you understand the problem they solve. The barrelie's body is relatively small and delicate compared with its dramatic head. This contrast gives the fish its unusual appearance. The body does not look built for force or speed in the way many familiar fish do. Instead, the most extraordinary investment seems to be in the sensory system. That tells us something about life in the deep. In a place where seeing the right thing at the right moment matters enormously, unusual head anatomy may be more valuable than a powerful body. Deep-sea animals often evolve unusual visual systems because light is scarce and mostly comes from above. This creates a visual world very different from our own. On land, light reflects from many directions, but in deep water, the remaining illumination is faint and directional. Animals there may evolve upward-facing eyes, large light-sensitive retinas, or special organs for detecting flashes. The barrel eye is one of the most striking examples of how deeply the problem of low light can shape a body. In a world lit mainly by faint downwelling light and flashes of bioluminescence, the placement of the eyes matters enormously. A small change in angle can alter what an animal notices and what it misses. The deep sea is not simply dark. It is dark in a patterned way, with certain directions offering more information than others. That is why eye orientation becomes such an important part of survival. The barrel eye's design is almost like an answer to a visual puzzle written by the ocean. The barrel eye's anatomy solved a long-standing mystery only after live footage became available. This is an important lesson in how science works. Some creatures cannot be fully understood from dead specimens alone, especially when their most unusual tissues are fragile or easily distorted. Live observation allows scientists to see movement, posture, and behavior in context. In the barrel eye's case, the real story of the eyes and head only became clear when people could watch the fish alive in its own environment. Preserved specimens made the fish harder to interpret because the transparent head can be damaged after capture. This shows how much our understanding of deep-sea animals can depend on the condition of rare samples. When a delicate structure collapses or becomes cloudy, important clues may disappear. So for many years, the barrel eye was partly hidden not because scientists lacked curiosity, but because the animal itself was difficult to preserve without losing its most revealing feature. Barrel eyes are thought to be solitary animals. In the deep sea, this is not surprising. Food is limited, encounters may be rare, and animals often spend their lives in wide, sparsely populated spaces. A solitary lifestyle can fit such conditions well. Instead of traveling in schools or large groups, a fish may simply move quietly through dark water, relying on its own senses and body design. The barrel eye seems suited to that kind of quiet independence. The barrel eye shows that some deep-sea creatures only begin to make sense when seen alive in their natural environment. On paper or in damaged specimens, the anatomy may look bizarre and confusing. But once the animal is placed back into the context of dark water, upward light, fragile prey, and careful hovering, its strange structure becomes understandable. In that way, the barrel eye is not only mysterious, it is also a reminder that nature often becomes clearer when studied on its own terms. Goblin sharks are deep-sea sharks with a long flattened snout and jaws that can project forward dramatically. Their appearance is one of the most unusual among sharks, because the head looks both elongated and highly specialized. The snout is not simply decorative. It plays an important sensory role, while the jaws can move outward in a striking feeding action. Together, these features give the shark a face that looks almost mechanical, yet every part of it serves a practical function in dark water. The long snout is covered with special sensing organs called ampullae of Lorenzini. These organs allow the shark to detect electrical signals in the surrounding water. Many aquatic animals produce tiny electric fields when muscles contract or nerves fire, and some predators can sense those faint patterns. For a shark living in dim depths where vision may be limited, the ability to detect electricity becomes a powerful tool. It allows the animal to find life even when it cannot clearly see it. Those sensory organs help the goblin shark detect electric fields from prey and darkness. This means the shark is not hunting only with sight or smell. It is also reading subtle biological signals that spread through water. In a deep environment where light is scarce and prey may be hidden or moving quietly, this sense can make the difference between finding a meal and missing it. It is another example of how deep-sea animals often depend on sensory abilities that humans rarely think about. Goblin sharks are often found along continental slopes, where the sea floor drops away into deeper water. These regions are important transitions between the shallower ocean and the much deeper sea beyond. They often host a wide variety of animals adapted to dim, pressure-heavy environments. A goblin shark living along these slopes occupies a place that is neither truly shallow nor among the deepest abyssal plains, but still far enough down to remain unfamiliar and rarely visited by people. Their skin can appear pinkish because blood vessels show through semi-translucent tissue. This gives the shark a strange color that can make it look almost unreal in photographs. Many people expect sharks to be gray, blue, or dark, so the pale pinkish tone adds to the goblin shark's unsettling reputation. But the color is not there to create drama. It is simply the visual effect of its tissue and blood vessels. The result is unusual, yet entirely natural. Goblin sharks are sometimes called living fossils because they represent an ancient shark lineage. That phrase can be misunderstood because it does not mean the animal has remained completely unchanged for vast stretches of time. Rather, it means the group has deep evolutionary roots and retains features that connect it to older shark forms. The goblin shark gives people the feeling of seeing something ancient still moving through the modern world, which is one reason it leaves such a strong impression. Their jaws can shoot forward dramatically when striking prey. This is one of the most extreme feeding motions known among sharks. Instead of relying only on rushing forward with the whole body, the goblin shark can project its mouth outward, extending its reach in the final instant. In the deep sea, where prey encounters may be brief and chances can be limited, this sudden extension is a valuable tool. It turns the head itself into a kind of striking mechanism. This jaw action is among the most extreme feeding motions known in sharks, and it shows how specialized the goblin shark has become. Many sharks are efficient hunters, but the goblin shark's method stands out because it looks so dramatic when filmed. The projected jaws make the shark appear to transform in mid-strike. Yet beneath the startling appearance is a very practical function. The motion helps secure prey that might otherwise escape in dark water, where precision matters. Adults are usually found deeper than juveniles. This suggests that different stages of life may use different parts of the ocean. Younger individuals may remain in somewhat shallower areas, while adults move farther down the continental slope into darker waters. This pattern is seen in a number of marine animals and may relate to differences in size, diet, predator risk, or reproductive behavior. It reminds us that a species does not always occupy its whole habitat in the same way throughout life. Goblin sharks inhabit all three major oceans, which means they are not confined to one single isolated region. Their mystery comes less from narrow geographic rarity and more from the depths they prefer. An animal can be globally distributed and still remain elusive if it lives mostly in places humans seldom reach. The goblin shark shows how a species may exist across a broad span of the world, while still feeling rare and almost legendary to the public. Goblin sharks are generally sluggish swimmers with flabby bodies and relatively small fins. This might seem surprising, because people often imagine all sharks as fast, muscular predators built for powerful pursuit. But deep-sea life can favor different strategies. In places where food is sparse, a slower body may conserve energy better than one built for constant speed. The goblin shark is not trying to be a sleek, open-ocean sprinter. It is shaped for a quieter, deeper style of life. A slow, cruising style makes sense for an animal living where food can be limited. In the deep ocean, calories are valuable, and wasting energy can be costly. Instead of patrolling rapidly through the water, a predator may benefit from moving steadily, sensing carefully, and relying on a specialized strike when the opportunity appears. The goblin shark's body suggests exactly that kind of strategy. It is a hunter designed less for speed over distance and more for effective moments of capture. Its teeth are long and narrow, which suits a diet that often includes soft-bodied prey. Teeth reflect feeding habits very clearly, and the goblin shark's teeth are better for gripping and seizing than for crushing. In deep water, where prey such as squid and certain fish may be slippery and delicate, narrow pointed teeth are a good solution. They help the shark hold on without needing the broad, crushing surfaces seen in animals that eat hard-shelled prey. Reported prey includes fish, crustaceans, and cephalopods. This tells us that the goblin shark is not feeding on a single narrow type of food, but on a variety of animals available in its environment. A mixed diet can be useful in the deep sea, where opportunities may be unpredictable. Rather than depending on one specific prey alone, the shark appears ready to take advantage of different kinds of creatures it encounters in the dark. They are rarely encountered by people, except as bycatch from deep-water fisheries. This is a major reason they remained mysterious for so long. Humans do not often meet goblin sharks on purpose. Instead, the sharks appear unexpectedly when fishing operations reach deep habitats. That means our contact with them has often been accidental and brief. For many people, the goblin shark exists mainly through rare photographs and occasional reports, not through ordinary scientific familiarity. A live goblin shark kept briefly in an aquarium survived only a short time, which shows how poorly many deep-sea animals tolerate the surface world. The pressure, temperature, and chemistry of deep habitats are very different from those at the surface. When animals adapted to those conditions are suddenly brought up, their bodies may struggle in ways that are difficult to reverse. This is one reason direct study of deep-sea creatures remains challenging. The very act of bringing them to us can harm them. The goblin shark's unusual profile helped give rise to its folkloric name in Japan. This is a nice reminder that human culture often responds strongly to distinctive animal forms. When a creature looks especially strange, people do not simply classify it. They also compare it, name it imaginatively, and place it within stories or visual traditions. The goblin shark's face is so memorable that it almost invites cultural interpretation. Even though it looks menacing, the species has little contact with humans. Its frightening appearance can create the impression of danger, but in reality, it lives far from the places where people swim or regularly travel. The goblin shark is mysterious because it is unfamiliar, not because it commonly threatens humans. Its life is largely separate from ours, unfolding in deeper water where it hunts quietly and mostly unseen. Its rarity in human observation owes more to depth than to true scarcity across the oceans. This is an important distinction. A species can seem rare simply because humans almost never visit the place where it lives. The goblin shark teaches that obscurity is not always the same thing as biological rarity. Sometimes an animal feels extraordinary mainly because its world lies outside our ordinary reach. Frilled sharks are eel-like deep-sea sharks with a mouth full of narrow, needle-like teeth. Their shape immediately sets them apart from the more familiar image of a shark. Instead of a broad, torpedo-shaped body, they have a long, more serpentine form. This body plan, combined with the many sharp teeth, gives them an appearance that feels ancient and almost reptilian. It is one of the reasons people so often describe them as sea serpent-like. They have around 300 teeth, arranged in many rows. That number sounds extraordinary, but in practice, it reflects the shark's feeding strategy. The teeth are slender and curved in ways that help grip slippery prey such as squid. With so many sharp points arranged inside the mouth, escaping becomes difficult once prey is seized. The frilled shark's mouth is not built to crush. It is built to catch and hold. Those teeth are shaped specifically for grasping slippery prey. In the deep sea, many animals have smooth bodies, soft tissues, or streamlined forms that are hard to hold. A shark feeding on such prey benefits from many fine, pointed teeth that act almost like hooks. The frilled shark's dental arrangement shows how anatomy can be tuned very precisely to the type of food available in its environment. The species is often called a living fossil because its body plan seems ancient. Like the goblin shark and the coelacanth, the frilled shark gives people the impression of something from an earlier chapter of Earth's history, still quietly persisting today. That impression comes not only from its lineage, but also from its look. Its body appears less like a modern high-speed shark and more like a design preserved from a very old marine world. Frilled sharks have often been described as resembling sea serpent legends. That comparison is easy to understand. A long, dark, deep-water animal with a strange head and an old-looking body naturally brings myths to mind. In the past, when the oceans were less understood, glimpses of unusual creatures could easily feed stories of serpents and monsters. The frilled shark shows how a real animal can echo those old images without needing any exaggeration. Their 6 pairs of gill slits create the frilled appearance that gives the shark its name. Most sharks have 5 gill slits, so this extra set already makes the animal unusual. The margins of these slits help form the wrinkled, frill-like look near the throat. It is a simple anatomical detail, but it changes the whole character of the animal's appearance. Sometimes one small difference can make a species feel entirely unfamiliar. Frilled sharks usually inhabit deep water, often more than 1,000 meters down. At that depth, they are living in a world of darkness, pressure, and low temperatures, far below where most people ever imagine sharks. This habitat explains why living encounters are rare and why the animal retained an aura of mystery for so long. It is not hiding in some magical place. It is simply living in one of the least accessible environments on the planet. Rare captures off places like Australia and Portugal have drawn attention because the species is so seldom seen alive. Each appearance becomes news precisely because the animal does not belong to everyday experience. When a frilled shark surfaces in public awareness, it feels like a messenger from a deeper and older world. The rarity of those encounters helps maintain the strong sense of mystery around the species. Their body is long and slender compared with most familiar sharks. This is not just a visual oddity. It likely reflects a different style of movement and feeding. A long, narrow body can be useful for stealthy motion in deeper water, where sudden lunges at soft-bodied prey may matter more than fast cruising in open, sunlit seas. The frilled shark's shape suggests a life very different from that of the classic reef or coastal shark. The mouth sits terminally at the front of the head rather than underneath, as in many sharks. This changes the entire look of the face and also affects how the shark engages with prey. A front-facing mouth fits an animal that may seize prey more directly ahead of itself. The arrangement feels unusual because it breaks from the shark shape many people carry in their minds. Once again, the deep sea seems to favor body plans that make familiar groups look new. Frilled sharks are thought to feed heavily on squid. This matches well with their teeth, jaws, and deep habitat. Squid are common deep-sea prey, soft-bodied and often slippery, exactly the sort of animal that a mouth full of needle-like teeth is suited to catch. A diet centered on squid also connects frilled sharks to the same shadowy world inhabited by other mysterious animals, like giant squid and other deep cephalopods. Their flexible jaws help them swallow prey that can be surprisingly large for their size. This ability is valuable in the deep, where food may not appear often. If a good opportunity comes, being able to handle a relatively large meal is useful. The frilled shark's feeding system seems built for those moments. It does not need frequent, tiny meals if it can make full use of the prey it manages to catch. The dark habitat where they live helps explain why they went largely unseen for so long. Frilled sharks were never truly hidden in a magical sense. They were hidden by depth, by low light, and by the difficulty of exploring the deep ocean consistently. Their mystery is therefore a very natural one. It comes from geography, pressure, and darkness more than from rarity alone. Unlike fast open water sharks, frilled sharks seem built for stealthy ambushes. Their bodies do not suggest high-speed pursuit over long distances. Instead, they seem suited to quiet movement and sudden capture when prey comes close. This makes sense in a deep-sea setting where conserving energy is important and visibility is limited. The frilled shark is a predator shaped less by chase and more by opportunity. Their ancient appearance does not mean they are unchanged relics, but it does show that some very old shark designs still work. This is one of the most fascinating things about so-called living fossils. They are not frozen in time. They are living animals that have continued surviving because their fundamental design remains effective. The frilled shark's body plan still functions well enough in the deep ocean for the lineage to persist into the present day. Frilled sharks are thought to feed heavily on squid, which makes a great deal of sense when you look at their habitat and body design. In the deep ocean, squid are common and important prey animals, and many of them are soft-bodied, slippery, and difficult to hold. A predator that specializes in catching such prey needs teeth and jaws built for gripping rather than crushing. The frilled shark fits that pattern very well. Its long body, many sharp teeth, and deep water lifestyle all point toward a hunting strategy suited to seizing animals like squid in dark water. Their flexible jaws help them swallow prey that can be surprisingly large for their size. This is useful in an environment where food may not appear often and every successful meal matters. In deep habitats, animals cannot always afford to be picky or waste an opportunity. If something substantial is caught, being able to handle and swallow it is a major advantage. The frilled shark's jaws are part of that system. They allow it to take full advantage of the rare moments when prey is actually within reach. The dark deep-sea habitat where frilled sharks live helps explain why they remained so poorly known for such a long time. It is easy to imagine mystery as something magical, but often it is simply the result of limited access. The deep ocean is hard to reach, hard to light, and hard to study for long periods. A species that lives there can remain unfamiliar not because it is imaginary or impossibly rare, but because its world lies beyond ordinary human observation. Unlike the fast, streamlined sharks of open surface waters, frilled sharks seem built for stealthy ambushes. Their bodies do not suggest constant fast swimming over long distances. Instead, they seem designed for quieter movement and sudden capture when the right moment comes. This makes sense in deep water, where conserving energy is important and visibility is limited. A shark does not always need to be fast to be effective. Sometimes it only needs to be patient, hidden, and ready. Their ancient appearance does not mean they are unchanged relics from the distant past, but it does show that some very old shark designs still work extremely well. When people call an animal a living fossil, they often mean that it preserves an overall body plan or lineage that reaches far back in time. The frilled shark gives that impression strongly. It looks like an animal from an older ocean, yet it is still alive now, still feeding, and still suited to its environment. The species reaches lengths of roughly 5 to 6 feet in many reported specimens. That is not enormous by shark standards, but it is still large enough to make the animal impressive, especially when combined with its unusual body shape. A long, eel-like shark of that size, appearing from dark water, feels much stranger than a more familiar shark of equal length. The frilled shark's mystery comes not from size alone, but from the way its size is expressed through such an unfamiliar form. Because frilled sharks are caught only rarely, many aspects of their reproduction and behavior remain poorly known. This is one of the most important things to understand about deep-sea mystery. There are still real gaps in knowledge, even for animals that have been scientifically named for a long time. Scientists may know the basic anatomy of a species, and still know far less than they would like about how it mates, develops, hunts, or moves through its habitat over time. When brought to the surface, frilled sharks usually do not survive long. This is common among deep-sea animals, whose bodies are adapted to high pressure, cold temperatures, and a very different physical setting than the one humans live in. The journey upward is not just a change of place. It is a major environmental shock. This difficulty is one reason why live study of deep species remains challenging. Their lives are best understood where they naturally belong, far below. Seeing a frilled shark alive often feels uncanny because it looks closer to a fossil illustration than to a modern fish. That reaction says something powerful about how we picture life on Earth. We expect present-day animals to look familiar and modern, but the frilled shark interrupts that feeling. It seems to carry an older style of body into the present, as if a drawing from deep time has suddenly begun to move. That visual effect is a large part of its strange power. Frilled sharks are mysterious, not because they are mythical, but because living examples are still unusual enough to feel like discoveries. That is a very special kind of mystery. It is not based on exaggeration or legend. It is based on the genuine rarity of human encounters. Every time one appears alive, it reminds us that our knowledge of the deep remains incomplete and that some real animals still arrive with the emotional force of a revelation. Coelacanths were once thought to have vanished with the dinosaurs about 65 million years ago. For many years, they were known only from fossils, which made them part of a world that seemed permanently lost. To scientists, that meant coelacanths belonged to history, not to the modern ocean. The idea that a fish could exist for so long in the fossil record and yet disappear from living nature felt settled. That is why the later rediscovery was so astonishing. It overturned what many people thought was certain. A living coelacanth caught in 1938 changed that assumption completely. Suddenly, a fish believed gone for tens of millions of years was no longer just a fossil form, but a living animal. Few scientific discoveries feel so dramatic because so few reverse such a large belief so suddenly. It was not the discovery of a tiny overlooked species in some narrow corner. It was the rediscovery of a creature many believed belonged only to ancient Earth. Coelacanths are often described as one of the world's most famous living fossils. That phrase captures the emotional effect they have on people. A living fossil is not an animal frozen in time, but one whose lineage and general form connect strongly with the distant past. Coelacanths do this especially well because they were so long associated with ancient rocks and vanished worlds. Seeing one alive makes the boundary between prehistory and the present feel unexpectedly thin. There are 2 living coelacanth species known today. This is important because it shows that the coelacanth is not just a single isolated oddity, but the surviving edge of a once much broader lineage. Even though only 2 living species are known, that small number is enough to tell us that the group is still biologically real in the modern ocean. The coelacanth is not merely a fossil category that vanished almost entirely. It still has living representatives swimming in deep water now. Their fossil history goes back roughly 420 million years, which is an astonishing length of time. That span reaches far beyond dinosaurs and deep into ancient eras of Earth's history. When you hear a number like that, it becomes easier to understand why the animal feels so unusual. The lineage stretches across changes in continents, climates, marine ecosystems, and mass extinctions. A coelacanth alive today is part of the story so long that human history barely registers beside it. Coelacanths are lobe-finned fish, a group more closely related to lungfish and tetrapods than to most living fish. This makes them scientifically important beyond their mystery alone. They help researchers think about major transitions in vertebrate history, and about the diversity of body plans that existed among ancient fish. Their place on the tree of life gives them significance not just as rare creatures, but as living representatives of a very important branch of vertebrate evolution. Their paired fins extend on fleshy lobes, which makes their movement look unusually limb-like compared with the fin motion of many other fish. This does not mean they walk like land animals, but it does make their swimming style visually distinctive. The fins do not appear as simple flat surfaces attached directly to the body. Instead, they project on muscular lobes that give the fish an especially ancient and intriguing look, as if the body is hinting at possibilities seen elsewhere in vertebrate history. Adult coelacanths can reach around 6 feet long. That size gives them a substantial presence in the water. They are not tiny relics hidden among small reef fish. They are large enough to feel physically impressive, especially when combined with their heavy-bodied shape and slow, deliberate movement. A large fish with such ancient associations naturally leaves a powerful impression. It is easier to understand why seeing one alive feels almost like meeting a survivor from another age. Individuals have been noted at weights of up to about 200 pounds. That means a coelacanth is not only long, but also solidly built. Its body has a substantial mass that adds to its sense of gravity and age. A fish of that weight, resting in deep underwater caves or moving slowly along volcanic slopes, carries a very different presence from a thin, fast surface swimmer. The coelacanth feels dense, calm, and almost solemn. Coelacanths may live for decades, with estimates reaching around 60 years. Long life adds another layer to their already unusual identity. A creature from such an ancient lineage, still living quietly for many decades in dark water, seems almost designed to slow our sense of time. Long lifespan often goes with slow development, slow reproduction, and stable habitats. In the coelacanth, it contributes to the feeling that this is a fish built for endurance rather than speed. Their rediscovery is one of the most dramatic stories in zoology. Many scientific discoveries are important without being emotionally startling, but the coelacanth story is both. It combines the careful world of paleontology with the shock of finding a supposed ghost of the fossil record alive in the present. That is a rare combination. The story still resonates because it reminds people that science can be surprised in ways that feel almost storybook, even when the evidence is entirely real. Coelacanths often inhabit deep volcanic slopes and underwater caves. These are hidden, rugged habitats where direct observation is difficult. A fish living in such places is naturally hard to study, which helps explain why it remained out of sight for so long. Volcanic slopes provide depth, shelter, and the kind of environment where a large, slow-moving fish can exist without frequent human contact. The setting itself contributes strongly to the coelacanth's mysterious reputation. They are most active at night, when they leave shelter to feed. This pattern is common in many animals, but in the coelacanth it adds another layer of secrecy. By day, the fish may remain tucked into caves or quieter spaces. By night, it moves outward into the darker water to forage. For humans trying to study such an animal, that rhythm makes observation even harder. It also fits the general impression of the coelacanth as a creature of shadow and quiet timing. During the day, groups may rest together in underwater caves. This is a fascinating image, because it means the fish is not always roaming open water. Instead, it spends part of its time in sheltered deep places that further reduce the chance of being seen. A resting coelacanth in a cave combines ancient lineage, dark habitat, and unusual behavior in one scene. It is exactly the kind of reality that sounds almost fictional until you remember that it has been documented. Coelacanths have a unique joint in the skull that helps them open the mouth widely. This feature is one of the reasons anatomists have long been interested in them. The skull is not simply a rigid box. It includes a special joint that changes how the mouth opens and how the head functions during feeding. Such an arrangement shows again that the coelacanth is not merely famous because it is old. It is also anatomically distinctive in ways that still matter scientifically. Their rostral organ is thought to help detect electric fields. This means the coelacanth may sense aspects of nearby animals that do not depend entirely on sight. In deep, dim habitats, the ability to perceive electric signals can be very helpful. Other animals generate tiny electrical patterns through nerves and muscles, and a predator or forager that can detect those patterns gains extra information about its surroundings. This sensory ability helps the coelacanth fit its dark environment even more effectively. New anatomical work showed that the coelacanth lacks several jaw muscles once thought to be present. This is a wonderful example of how even famous animals can still surprise science. People sometimes assume that once a species becomes well known, its body is fully understood. But anatomy can remain open to revision, especially in rare species studied from limited material. The coelacanth continues to teach researchers not only about the past, but about the present limits of our knowledge. That finding shows that even well-known species can still surprise anatomists. The coelacanth is famous, iconic, and heavily discussed, yet it still holds structural surprises. This is a useful reminder that scientific knowledge is always capable of refinement. A species does not lose its ability to reveal new truths just because it has become celebrated. Sometimes, the more carefully people look, the more complex the animal becomes. Coelacanths are mysterious, partly because they bridge the worlds of paleontology and living biology. Most animals are known mainly as living species, or mainly as fossils. The coelacanth belongs strongly to both categories at once. It is studied as a modern fish, but it also carries the weight of fossil history in a very direct way. That dual identity is one reason it feels so special. It belongs to the present, yet it seems to open the door toward deep time. Few animals make time feel stranger than a fish, once known mainly from fossils swimming quietly in the modern ocean. That is the emotional core of the coelacanth's mystery. It is not only about appearance or rarity. It is about the feeling that an ancient chapter of Earth has not fully closed. Somewhere in deep water, an animal long tied to stone and extinction still moves through the living sea. Chambered nautiluses are ancient cephalopods with external spiral shells. This already sets them apart from most of their well-known relatives. Octopuses have no external shell, and squids carry very reduced internal structures, but the nautilus still lives inside a visible coiled shell. That shell gives the animal an immediate air of antiquity. It feels like something from a much older ocean, not only because of how it looks, but because its body plan truly does reach far back in time. Nautiluses have been around for more than 480 million years. That is a time span so vast that it reaches into a world utterly unlike our own. Long before mammals, birds, or even dinosaurs appeared, ancestors of the nautilus were already in the ocean. When people look at a chambered nautilus, they are not just looking at a beautiful shell. They are looking at a surviving design with roots in some of the earliest complex marine ecosystems. Their shells are divided internally into chambers. This is one of the most elegant engineering features in the natural world. The shell is not just a simple hollow spiral. It is partitioned into many internal spaces, each with a role in the animal's buoyancy system. That internal design is part of why the nautilus shell has fascinated both scientists and artists. It combines practical function with striking geometric beauty. The animal lives only in the outermost chamber of the shell. The older chambers behind it are not living rooms in the everyday sense, but structures that contribute to balance and buoyancy. As the nautilus grows, it builds new chambers and moves forward, leaving the earlier ones behind as part of the shell's internal system. This creates a lovely record of growth, with the shell preserving earlier stages of the animal's life in a spiral arrangement. Gas and fluid in the older chambers help control buoyancy. This means the shell is not simply protective. It is also part of a delicate flotation mechanism that helps the animal manage its position in the water. Buoyancy is a central challenge for many marine animals, and the Nautilus solves it in a way that is both ancient and highly refined. The shell becomes a tool for balance, not just a shield. A tube called the siphuncle connects the chambers and helps regulate that buoyancy system. This soft tissue structure allows the Nautilus to adjust the balance of gas and liquid within the shell over time. It is an excellent example of how a beautiful-looking natural object can also be a deeply practical biological machine. The spiral shell is famous for its appearance, but hidden inside it is a living system of control and regulation. Nautiluses live on deep reef slopes in the Indo-Pacific. These habitats are different from both shallow tropical reef scenes and the extreme abyssal depths of the open ocean. A deep reef slope is dimmer, cooler, and more hidden than the bright reef top, and it gives the Nautilus a setting that matches its slow, measured way of life. Living along these slopes helps explain why the animal can feel remote and old, even within tropical seas. Unlike octopuses and most squids, Nautiluses keep an external shell throughout life. This makes them visually and biologically distinctive among cephalopods. While their relatives evolved away from heavy external shells, the Nautilus retained one. That single fact changes almost everything about how it moves, protects itself, and manages buoyancy. It also gives the animal its special place in public imagination, because the shell is impossible to ignore. They have many tentacles, but no suckers on those tentacles. This is another reminder that Nautiluses are not simply shelled versions of squid. Their tentacles work differently and reflect a different style of feeding and interaction with the environment. The absence of suckers makes them feel more primitive to some observers, though really it just shows that they followed a different path of cephalopod specialization. Their pinhole-style eyes are structurally simpler than the camera-like eyes of most other cephalopods. This does not mean their eyes are useless. It means the Nautilus uses a visual system built on a different plan. In a world where squids and octopuses are famous for highly advanced eyes, the Nautilus stands apart. It carries a simpler optical design that adds to the sense that it comes from an older branch of cephalopod history. Nautiluses often rise to shallower depths at night to feed. This vertical movement allows them to take advantage of changing conditions while reducing some risks that may exist during brighter hours. Night movement is common in marine life, but in the Nautilus it feels especially fitting. The animal spends the day in deeper, darker water and then drifts upward into somewhat shallower zones when the world above is dimmer and calmer. They are opportunistic feeders and scavengers. Rather than relying only on active hunting of one narrow prey type, they can take advantage of different food sources as they encounter them. In marine environments where food can be unpredictable, this flexibility is useful. A scavenging and opportunistic strategy helps explain how such an ancient lineage has remained viable for so long. It is a patient and practical way to live. They can use jet propulsion to move in different directions. Although nautiluses are not the fastest cephalopods, they still share this basic cephalopod method of movement. By pushing water out, they can propel themselves and maneuver through the sea. In the Nautilus, jet propulsion works alongside the shell's buoyancy system, creating a balance between floating control and active movement. The result is a creature that moves with a different rhythm from faster chalet relatives. Nautiluses are long-lived for cephalopods, with lifespans often reaching around 20 years or more. This is quite unusual because many cephalopods live much shorter lives. A long lifespan changes the whole pace of life. It often goes together with slow growth delayed maturity, and a more measured reproductive strategy. In the nautilus, that slower timescale fits the animal's ancient image perfectly. It is a cephalopod that seems in no hurry. They also mature slowly compared with octopuses and many squids. Slow maturity means each individual takes longer to reach adulthood, which can make populations more vulnerable to heavy exploitation. But it also reflects an older, steadier life strategy. Not all successful animals live fast and reproduce quickly. The nautilus follows a different pattern, one shaped by time, depth, and long continuity rather than speed and rapid turnover. Captive breeding of chambered nautiluses has been rare. This makes them difficult to study and protect in controlled settings. Some animals reproduce fairly easily in captivity, giving researchers many chances to observe development. The nautilus is not one of them. Its specialized life history and long developmental timing make reproduction in human care unusual, which adds to the animal's aura of difficulty and delicacy. Young nautiluses have emerged from eggs only after a very long developmental period. This long wait is another sign of the species' slow biological pace. Rather than developing quickly and hatching soon, the young spend a long time inside the egg before finally emerging. That extended development fits the broader pattern seen across the animal's life: slow growth, long lifespan, and a general resistance to hurry. Their shell follows a logarithmic spiral that has fascinated naturalists, artists, and mathematicians for generations. The shell is not merely useful. It is also visually ordered in a way that humans find deeply satisfying. People have long been drawn to its geometry because it seems to combine nature and mathematics in a very pure form. The chambered nautilus is one of the clearest examples of an animal whose beauty has scientific and artistic appeal at the same time. Because the shell is beautiful and durable, nautiluses have long been exploited for the shell trade. This is one of the sadder parts of their story. The same features that make them admired also make them vulnerable. A shell that survives well and looks striking is attractive to collectors and markets, which can put pressure on wild populations. It is a reminder that beauty in nature does not always bring safety. They feel mysterious because they are both delicate animals and living machines of buoyancy carried inside a perfect-looking spiral. That combination is what makes them so memorable. The nautilus is not just a shell, and it is not just a soft cephalopod. It is the union of geometry, engineering, age, and life. Few creatures seem to combine natural history and quiet elegance so completely. The platypus is one of the very few mammals that lay eggs, and that single fact is enough to make it feel extraordinary. Most people grow up learning that mammals give birth to live young, so the platypus immediately seems to bend that rule. But it does not stop being a mammal just because it lays eggs. It still produces milk for its young and still belongs firmly within the mammal family. That unusual combination is one of the main reasons the platypus has fascinated scientists and ordinary observers for so long. Along with echidnas, platypuses belong to the monotremes, a very small and unusual branch of mammals. Monotremes are special because they combine some features that people associate with reptiles, such as glaying, with core mammalian traits such as fur and milk production. This makes them extremely important for understanding the diversity of mammals. They remind us that the mammal family is wider and stranger than many simple textbook summaries suggest. When early European naturalists first examined a platypus specimen, some thought it might be a hoax stitched together from several animals. That reaction tells you just how strange the animal looked to unfamiliar eyes. Its bill seemed bird-like, its tail suggested a beaver, and its body looked like an otter's. To people used to neatly separated animal categories, the platypus seemed too improbable to be real. The fact that it was real made it even more astonishing. The platypus has often been described as a blend of duck, beaver, and otter features. This comparison is not scientifically exact, but it captures the way the animal combines traits that most people expect to see in completely different creatures. Its bill is broad and flat, its tail is broad and useful for fat storage, and its body is well suited for swimming. The overall result is an animal that looks almost like nature, playfully mixed familiar forms into something entirely new. The platypus bill is soft and packed with sensory receptors. It is not a hard bird beak in the usual sense, but a highly specialized structure that functions as a remarkable sensory tool. The bill helps the animal interpret its underwater world, almost like a living detector pressed through mud and water. In an environment where prey may be hidden and vision is limited, such a bill becomes much more than a mouth. It becomes a central way of understanding the surroundings. Those receptors in the bill help the platypus detect prey underwater. This is important because the streams and waterways where platypuses forage are often murky, dim, or full of plant matter and sediment. A visual hunter would have difficulty relying on sight alone. The platypus solves that problem by using sensory information gathered through the bill, allowing it to find edible animals hidden in the bottom. It is a wonderful example of a mammal using a very unusual tool to navigate an aquatic life. Platypuses close their eyes, ears, and nostrils when they dive. That means they give up several senses that humans usually depend on, at least temporarily, while underwater. This might sound like a disadvantage at first, but it makes sense once you understand how important the bill is. The platypus is not blindly stumbling through the water. It is shifting into a different sensory mode, trusting its bill to do the work of locating prey below the surface. Because the eyes, ears, and nostrils are closed during dives, the bill becomes the main tool for locating food underwater. This gives the platypus a very different style of hunting from that of many mammals. It does not need to stare at prey or listen for movement in the usual way. Instead, it sweeps and probes, gathering information through specialized receptors. The bill is not just part of the face. It is the center of the platypus's underwater awareness. Male platypuses have venomous spurs on their hind legs. This is one of the strangest and least expected mammalian features anywhere in nature. When people imagine venomous animals, they often think of snakes, spiders, or scorpions, not furry, aglaying mammals swimming quietly in streams. Yet the male platypus carries exactly that kind of weapon. The spur makes the animal even harder to classify in simple, everyday terms, which adds to its mysterious reputation. The venom is not usually lethal to humans, but it can cause extreme pain. That makes it medically and biologically interesting. The venom is not a casual detail or an empty trait. It has real power, even if it is not normally deadly. Pain from platypus's venom has been described as unusually intense, which is part of what makes the animal so surprising. Beneath its calm, almost gentle appearance lies a defensive and competitive system that most people would never guess. Platypuses hunt aquatic invertebrates such as insect larvae, worms, and crustaceans. These are small animals, but together they provide the protein and energy the platypus needs. The animal searches through the bottoms of streams and waterways for these hidden prey items, often in muddy or cluttered places. This type of diet fits well with the platypus's sensory bill and underwater foraging style. It is not chasing large animals. It is patiently gathering life from the quiet world below the surface. They store food in cheek pouches while foraging underwater. This is a practical solution for an animal that spends time diving and searching through the bottom. Instead of stopping after every small find, the platypus can gather food while underwater and then deal with it more fully later. It is a nice example of efficiency. In nature, Small structural solutions like this can make a big difference in how smoothly an animal's daily life works. The platypus has dense fur that helps trap insulating air. This is very important because water removes body heat much faster than air does. A warm-blooded mammal living in streams and rivers needs protection against heat loss, especially during repeated dives. The thick fur helps create that protection. So while the platypus may seem strange because of its bill or egg-laying habits, it is also a well-built aquatic mammal with practical features that keep it functioning in chilly water. Platypuses are mostly active at night or during low-light hours. This makes them more difficult for people to observe and helps explain why they can remain elusive even in places where they still live. A twilight or nighttime schedule also fits well with stream environments, where activity patterns may reduce exposure to predators or competition. In a broader sense, this timing adds to the animal's mystery. The platypus is real and well studied, yet many people never see one because it belongs to the quieter hours. Their tails store fat reserves. That means the tail is not only useful in swimming or movement, but also acts as an energy storage site. This is another way the platypus manages the practical demands of life in the wild. Food availability can change, conditions can become harder, and stored energy helps an animal stay resilient. The tail, therefore, is not just a recognizable body feature. It is part of the platypus's internal budgeting system for survival. Genetic work has shown that platypuses also have strong odor-related genes. This suggests that smell and chemical cues matter more than people might assume. Because the bill and electroreception get so much attention, it can be easy to imagine the platypus relying on only one extraordinary sense. But biology is rarely that simple. The animal seems to combine several sensory pathways, creating a richer picture of the environment than any one system could provide on its own. That finding suggests smell and chemical cues matter alongside electroreception. In other words, the platypus is not built around a single trick. It uses a collection of sensory tools, each adding information in its own way. This layered strategy makes sense in complex aquatic habitats where visibility may be poor and prey may be hidden. Nature often rewards redundancy and cooperation among senses, and the platypus appears to be a strong example of that principle. A platypus sweeps its bill from side to side as it searches stream bottoms. This motion is simple, steady, and effective. Rather than darting around dramatically, the animal moves its bill through the water and sediment in a way that lets it sample the environment carefully. The movement turns the bill into a scanning instrument, helping the platypus detect food buried or concealed among debris. It is a quiet feeding style, but a highly specialized one. The combination of laying, milk production, venom, and electroreception makes the platypus one of the strangest mammals alive. Any one of those features would already be memorable. Together, they create an animal that seems to gather improbable traits from several different categories of life. That is why the platypus remains so famous. It does not just break one expectation about mammals. It breaks several at once, yet still forms a perfectly functional and successful animal. Platypuses are mysterious because they seem to ignore many of the usual rules people expect mammals to follow. Of course, from a biological point of view, the platypus is not breaking rules. It is simply following its own evolutionary path. But to human intuition, it feels like a collection of exceptions gathered into one body. That tension between scientific reality and human expectation is exactly what gives the platypus its lasting air of mystery. The ii is a lemur, found only in Madagascar, which already makes it special because Madagascar is famous for unusual animals found nowhere else. Isolation often allows creatures to evolve in distinctive directions, and the IE is one of the most striking results of that process. Even among Madagascar's remarkable wildlife, it stands out. It is not only rare or local, it is one of the most visually and behaviorally unusual primates on Earth. It has rodent-like teeth that grow continuously. This is a surprising trait in a primate, because most people do not associate primates with teeth, more like those of gnawing mammals. But for the II, these teeth make sense. It needs to chew into wood to reach hidden food, and constantly growing incisors support that demanding behavior. This is one reason the EI seems so strange. It belongs to a familiar mammal group, yet carries a tool set that feels borrowed from somewhere else. It also has an extremely thin, elongated middle finger used in feeding. That finger is one of the II's most famous features. It looks almost too narrow and delicate to be useful, yet it is central to the animal's survival. The finger allows the II to probe narrow spaces and extract food from places other animals cannot easily reach. When people first see it, it can look eerie or unnatural, but in ecological terms, it is a beautifully specialized instrument. The II is the only primate known to use echolocation-like tapping behavior to find food. This means it taps on wood and listens for differences in the sound, using those clues to judge what may be hidden inside. That behavior is extraordinary because it resembles methods more often associated with certain birds or entirely different kinds of animals. In a primate, it is especially unusual. The II shows just how far primate behavior can diverge from the familiar image of monkeys and apes. It taps on wood and listens for hollow spaces beneath the surface. This is a simple description, but it reflects a sophisticated feeding strategy. The animal is essentially testing the structure of the wood, searching for signs of tunnels or cavities where insects may be hiding. It is not relying on sight alone. It is interpreting sound, vibration, and structure. That makes the II not just unusual looking, but behaviorally inventive in a very practical way. Its large ears help detect the acoustic differences in those taps. Without sensitive hearing, the tapping behavior would not be nearly as useful. The ears are part of the whole feeding system, helping the II notice the subtle difference between solid wood and wood hiding a cavity or lava. This is a nice example of multiple traits working together. The hand, the teeth, the hearing, and the behavior all combine into a coordinated method for finding concealed food. After locating insect tunnels, the II gnaws into the wood with its incisors. This is where the rodent-like teeth become especially important. Once the tapping and listening suggest that food is hidden inside, the animal must physically reach it. Chewing through wood is not a casual task. It demands durable, effective teeth. So the II's feeding method works in stages. Locate the hidden food, cut into the barrier, and then retrieve the prey with specialized fingers. Then it uses the long finger like a hooked probe to pull out grubs. This is one of the most remarkable feeding tools among primates. The finger is not simply long for appearance. It acts like a narrow instrument that can reach into tight spaces and draw food outward. This means the II is doing something very few primates do, extracting concealed prey from inside wood with a tool-like body part built specifically for that purpose. Researchers have even identified an extra thumb-like structure in the II hand. This discovery made the animal even more fascinating because it suggested there was more complexity in the hand than people had realized. A thumb-like structure can help with grip and control, and in an animal already known for highly specialized fingers, this adds another layer of precision. It shows that even well-known strange animals can still surprise researchers when studied carefully. That extra digit appears to help with gripping. This is important because the II spends time climbing, handling branches, and using its hands in delicate ways while feeding. A better grip can improve stability and control, especially for an animal whose lifestyle involves both movement in trees and highly specific hand-based foraging. The hand is not strange for the sake of being strange. It is a carefully shaped toolkit suited to a very particular ecological role. The eye is nocturnal and often difficult to spot in the wild. This contributes strongly to its eerie reputation. Animals active at night are naturally less familiar to people, and nocturnal life often favors enlarged eyes, heightened hearing, and unusual behavior. The eye fits that pattern perfectly. It is not just uncommon. It belongs to the dark hours, when many of its most distinctive behaviors unfold out of ordinary sight. Its large, reflective eyes suit nighttime life. At night, gathering available light becomes extremely important, and large eyes help with that task. The reflective quality people notice is part of the animal's adaptation to dim environments. These eyes add to its distinctive appearance, but they are also practical tools for seeing and moving through the forest after dark. In the eye, appearance and function are closely linked. The species is so unusual that local folklore has sometimes treated it as an omen. This is a reminder that humans often respond to unfamiliar animals, not only with curiosity, but also with fear or symbolic meaning. A nocturnal primate with strange teeth, large eyes, and an unnaturally thin finger can easily gather stories around it. Folklore does not create the animal's mystery from nothing. It grows out of how striking the real creature already is. Its feeding method has been compared to woodpecker behavior, even though it evolved in a primate. This comparison is useful because it shows how similar ecological challenges can produce functionally similar behaviors in very different animals. A woodpecker probes wood for hidden insects, and the eye does something broadly similar in its own primate way. This does not mean the two animals are closely related. It means nature can arrive at comparable solutions using very different materials. No other primate is known to specialize in the same combination of tapping, gnawing, and finger probing. That makes the eye not just unusual, but unique. Many primates are clever, dexterous, or flexible in diet, but the eye occupies a feeding niche unlike any other primate known. Uniqueness like that gives an animal great scientific importance. It shows just how diverse primate life can become under the right ecological conditions. The middle finger can move rapidly and independently. This is important because precision matters when probing for food inside wood. A finger that can move quickly and separately from the others is more useful for testing spaces, reaching into narrow tunnels, and pulling out small prey. It is another example of the eye's body being shaped in fine detail around its feeding method. The hand is not just unusual in form, it is unusual in motion as well. Eyes feed on insects, nectar, seeds, and some fruits, as well as wood-boring larvae. This means they are not restricted to only one kind of meal, even though hidden larvae are a famous part of their story. A wider diet can help an animal survive in changing conditions and across different seasons. The eye is specialized, but not helplessly narrow. It uses its remarkable tools for some foods, while also taking advantage of other resources in its forest habitat. Their hands are highly specialized, showing that primate evolution can produce very un-monkey-like tools. This is one of the most interesting lessons of the eye. People often carry a narrow idea of what primate hands should look like, but evolution is not limited by our expectations. In the eye, the hand has become something almost instrument-like, built for probing and gripping in ways that feel far removed from the usual primate image. The eye looks mysterious partly because it is familiar enough to seem mammalian, yet specialized enough to seem almost invented. That balance is exactly what makes it so memorable. If it were completely alien-looking, people might simply accept it as other. But because it is recognizably a furry mammal and still so unusual, it creates a deeper feeling of uncanniness. It stands close enough to familiarity to unsettle it. It is one of the clearest examples of a primate becoming the ecological equivalent of a tiny nighttime carpenter. That comparison works because the eye spends so much of its life tapping, gnawing, probing, and working on wood in search of food. It behaves almost like a specialist artisan of the forest at night. The image may sound poetic, but it is grounded in real biology. The eye has turned a primate body into a remarkably precise tool for hidden work in darkness. The Ohm is a blind, cave-dwelling salamander of southeastern Europe. Even that brief description sounds unusual, because it combines blindness, caves, and a fully aquatic life in underground waters. The Ohm is one of those animals that seems shaped entirely by secrecy. It is not simply rare to humans because it lives in remote mountains or dense forests. It lives beneath the ground itself, in submerged darkness, where very few vertebrates spend their whole lives. It is also called the Proteus or human fish because of its pale skin. The nickname comes from the soft pinkish tone of its body, which can remind people of human skin under certain light. This pale appearance immediately sets it apart from many surface amphibians, which often rely on darker coloration or visible patterning. In the underground world of the Ohm, color has less value for camouflage, and the result is an animal that looks almost ghostly to human eyes. Ohms spend their entire lives in subterranean waters. This is a profound commitment to a hidden environment. They do not merely retreat underground for part of the year or for one stage of life. Their whole existence unfolds in cave streams, pools, and watery passages beneath the surface. A life like that shapes everything about the body and behavior. The Ohm is not just an amphibian that tolerates darkness. It belongs to darkness completely. They are the only European vertebrates known to live exclusively underground. This makes the Ohm especially significant because it represents an extreme ecological specialization. Many animals use caves sometimes, but very few vertebrates spend their whole lives in such hidden places. The Ohm shows how far adaptation can go when a species becomes fully committed to a stable but demanding environment of darkness, narrow space, and limited food. Their eyes are greatly reduced because light is absent in their habitat. In total darkness, eyes become less useful, and over long stretches of time, structures that no longer provide enough benefit may shrink or lose function. The Ohm reflects that process very strongly. Rather than maintaining full vision in a place where light never arrives, it relies on other senses. Its reduced eyes are part of the larger story of a body reorganized around life without sight. Instead of relying on vision, Ohms use other senses, including sensitivity to chemicals and even weak electric fields. This is one of the most remarkable things about them. A creature that loses one major sense does not simply become helpless. It shifts emphasis to others. In the Ohm, the dark cave environment has favored a style of awareness based on non-visual information. Water carries chemical signals, subtle movements, and electrical cues, and the Ohm is adapted to read that hidden world. Their pale, pinkish body reflects the darkness of cave life, where camouflage based on color matters less. On the surface, color can serve many purposes, such as hiding from predators, signaling to mates, or blending with surroundings. In lightless underground waters, much of that becomes irrelevant. The Ohm's pale body shows what happens when vision no longer dominates daily life. The result is an animal that seems almost unfinished in color, but perfectly suited to its world. Ohms can live extraordinarily long lives for salamanders. Long life is often associated with slow development and a stable environment. and caves tend to be relatively steady places compared with the changing surface. The ohm's longevity fits that pattern. It lives in a world with little light, little food, and often little dramatic change. Such a setting favors patience, efficiency, and a body built for endurance rather than speed. Lifespans may reach about 100 years, which is astonishing for an amphibian. A creature that small, pale, and hidden can survive for a century under the right conditions. That fact gives the ohm a quiet grandeur. It is not powerful in the way a large predator is powerful, but it possesses an extraordinary command of time. In the darkness of caves, it can live through spans that far exceed what many people would ever guess for such an animal. They also reproduce slowly, which makes populations vulnerable. Slow reproduction can work in a stable environment where adult animals survive for a long time, but it becomes risky when conditions change or when populations are disturbed. If few young are produced and development is gradual, recovery from losses may take a long time. This is one of the hidden costs of a slow life strategy. What works beautifully in an undisturbed cave world can become fragile in a changing one. Ohms can survive long periods without food because cave ecosystems are often extremely poor in nutrients. In underground waters, there is no sunlight to power rich plant growth the way it does on the surface, so food chains are usually limited and fragile. An animal living there cannot depend on constant meals. The ohm has adapted by becoming remarkably efficient, able to wait through long stretches when little edible material is available. This ability is one of the clearest signs that it truly belongs to the cave world, rather than merely visiting it. Their metabolism is correspondingly slow. A slow metabolism means the body uses energy carefully and steadily, instead of burning through it quickly. In a habitat where meals may be rare, this is a major advantage. The ohm does not need the constant intake required by more active surface animals. Its entire pace of life fits the cave environment, where calm persistence matters more than speed. In many ways, the ohm survives by stretching both time and energy farther than most animals can. They retain larval traits into adulthood, including external gills. This means that even when fully grown, ohms still keep features that in many amphibians are seen mainly in juvenile stages. The feathery gills remain useful because the animal lives its whole life in water. This retention of youthful traits is another way the ohm challenges ordinary expectations. It does not follow the familiar amphibian path from water-bound youth to more land-oriented adulthood. Instead, it stays committed to its aquatic underground existence from beginning to end. In Slovenia, ohms have sometimes been connected to legends of cave dragons. This is easy to understand when you imagine pale, elongated animals occasionally appearing from hidden waters deep inside karst caves. Before modern zoology, such rare appearances could easily inspire stories of creatures from underground realms. The link to dragons is not just a curious bit of folklore. It shows how strongly real animals can shape human imagination when they emerge from places people do not fully understand. Their long, narrow bodies help them move through submerged cave passages. A slender shape is useful in a world of crevices, narrow spaces, and winding channels beneath the earth. The ohm does not need a bulky frame or fast-swimming profile. It needs a body that can navigate confinement and conserve energy while doing so. The more you picture its habitat, the more sensible its form becomes. It is built for hidden corridors rather than open water. Cave habitats can be stable for long periods, which helps explain the ohm's slow life history. Surface environments often change with weather, seasons, sunlight, and plant growth, but caves can remain comparatively constant in temperature and darkness. In such a steady world, animals may evolve slower rhythms of growth, feeding, and reproduction. The ohm reflects that stability. It is not rushing through life because its habitat does not demand the same rapid response that many surface habitats do. Because they live in hidden underground waters, scientists had difficulty studying ohms for centuries. A species that spends its entire life below the surface is naturally hard to observe. Researchers cannot simply walk through the habitat the way they might in a forest or on a shoreline. Caves are difficult, dangerous, and limited spaces, and aquatic cave passages are even more inaccessible. This means the ohm remained partly mysterious, not because it was especially large or rare, but because its world itself is so hard to enter. Even seeing eggs or young in natural conditions has been unusual enough to attract public attention. That fact shows how little direct access humans often have to the ohm's daily life. For many species, eggs, young, and breeding behavior can be observed with relative ease, but not for a salamander hidden in underwater cave systems. When such moments are documented, they become important not only scientifically, but emotionally, because they reveal parts of a life cycle that were once almost entirely concealed. The ohm shows that one of the strangest forms of mystery is not ferocity, but extreme secrecy. It is not a giant predator or a dramatic hunter. Its power lies in how completely it is adapted to a hidden world most humans never see. It reminds us that mystery in nature can come from stillness, darkness, and absence, rather than from danger. A pale cave salamander can feel just as uncanny as a monster, simply because it lives so far outside ordinary experience. Few vertebrates are so specialized for a world of darkness, silence, and very little food. The ohm represents an extreme of adaptation, where nearly every major feature of life has been reshaped by an underground environment. Vision fades, other senses sharpen, growth slows, and time stretches out. It is a creature built around scarcity and secrecy, and that makes it one of the most quietly extraordinary animals on Earth. Axolotls are salamanders native to central Mexico. Unlike the hidden cave-bound ohm, the axolotl belongs to a very different story, one tied to lakes, wetlands, and human history in one of the world's great urban regions. Yet it is just as unusual in its own way. The axolotl has become globally famous not only because of how it looks, but because of how its body behaves. It is one of those rare animals that seems almost made to surprise biology students and scientists alike. Unlike most salamanders, axolotls usually remain in a larval form throughout life, a condition called neoteny. In simple terms, this means they keep youthful features even after becoming capable of reproduction. Most salamanders undergo a more dramatic transformation into a different adult form, but the axolotl often does not. Instead, it becomes a breeding adult, while still looking like an aquatic juvenile. This gives it its familiar appearance, with a broad head, external gills, and an almost permanently youthful look. The feathery structures on the sides of the head are external gills. These are not decorative frills, even though they are one of the animal's most recognizable features. They are vital breathing organs that allow the axolotl to take in oxygen from the water. Because the animal stays in its aquatic form, these gills remain useful throughout life. Their soft branching shape also adds to the axolotl's calm and unusual appearance, making it look both delicate and highly specialized. Most wild axolotls are brown, not pink. This often surprises people because the pale pinkish-white form is the one commonly seen in aquariums, laboratories, and images online. In nature, however, darker coloration is more typical and likely provides better camouflage in their native environment. The familiar pink axolotl is therefore not the default wild look of the species, but a caliform that became especially visible through captivity and scientific use. The pinkish-white axolotl, common in aquariums, is a color form popular in captivity. Its pale body and bright external gills make it visually striking, which is one reason it has become so recognizable around the world. But captivity can change which traits people think of as normal. In the axolotl's case, the laboratory and pet world helped shape public imagination, making one unusual color form seem like the standard version of the species. Axolotls are famous for regeneration. This is perhaps the single most extraordinary part of their biology. Many animals can heal wounds, but axolotls can do far more than that. They can rebuild complex structures that in most vertebrates would be permanently lost. This ability is why the axolotl is not just a charming amphibian, but a major scientific model. It is a living demonstration that vertebrate tissues can, under the right biological conditions, repair themselves far more completely than humans usually experience. They can regrow limbs, tail tissue, spinal cord, and parts of organs. That list is remarkable because it includes structures of very different kinds, from external limbs to important internal tissues. Regrowing a body part is not just a matter of closing a wound. It requires rebuilding shape, tissues, nerves, blood supply, and function in a coordinated way. The axolotl does this with a level of success that makes scientists study it intensely, hoping to understand what makes such rebuilding possible. Scientists also study their ability to repair parts of the brain and heart. This takes the axolotl's regenerative power beyond the simple image of it can grow a new limb. It means the animal may also repair tissues that are especially important and especially difficult to heal well in many other vertebrates. For medicine and developmental biology, this is deeply significant. The axolotl is not merely an oddity. It is a clue to processes that researchers hope may one day inspire new approaches to human healing. Their genome is enormous. Genome size does not automatically mean an animal is more complex in every everyday sense, but it does mean the axolotl carries an immense amount of genetic material. This large genome has intrigued scientists because it may be connected in some way to the animal's developmental biology and regenerative abilities. It also makes the axolotl scientifically challenging, because studying such a large genome is harder than working with the smaller genomes of many model organisms. The axolotl genome has about 32 billion base pairs, around 10 times longer than the human genome. That number gives some real scale to just how large it is. A genome of that size is not just slightly bigger, it is enormous by comparison. This makes the axolotl even more scientifically remarkable, because researchers must deal with an unusually large amount of genetic information when trying to understand the mechanisms behind its strange AD and valuable biological powers. Wild axolotls are critically endangered. This is one of the saddest contrasts in modern biology. An animal can be famous in laboratories and beloved worldwide, yet still be in grave danger in the habitat where it naturally belongs. The axolotl is not secure simply because people know its name. Its wild populations face serious pressure, and that means its future in nature remains uncertain despite its cultural and scientific fame. Their natural home was the lake and canal system around Xochimilco. This ties the axolotl to a very specific landscape, one shaped by both natural wetlands and long human history. Xochimilco is not an isolated wilderness in the simple sense. It is part of a region deeply connected to agriculture, urbanization, and cultural change. The axolotl's story is therefore not only biological. It is also a story about what happens when a unique animal shares its home with a growing human world. Habitat loss and invasive fish have contributed heavily to their decline in the wild. Habitat loss reduces the spaces where axolotls can feed, reproduce, and survive, while invasive fish may eat eggs, young, or compete for resources. This combination is especially damaging. It shows how extinction risk often comes not from one dramatic cause alone, but from several pressures working together until a species becomes trapped between them. Axolotls became globally famous in laboratories long before many people understood how imperiled they were in nature. That mismatch is striking. Around the world, students and researchers came to know the axolotl as a scientific marvel, while its actual native populations declined. It is a reminder that visibility in science or culture does not guarantee safety in the wild. An animal can be studied everywhere and still vanish from the place where it evolved. The name axolotl is connected with the Aztec god Xolotl in traditional accounts. This adds a cultural layer to the animal's identity, tying it to one of the great civilizations of Mesoamerica. The connection gives the axolotl more than biological importance. It also places it within a deeper human history of names, stories, and symbolic meaning. That combination of science and heritage helps explain why the species holds such a special place in Mexico and beyond. Newly hatched axolotls may nip siblings, and those bitten parts can regrow. This is a surprisingly direct demonstration of regeneration in daily life. In many animals, such injuries would cause permanent loss or disability. In axolotls, the body can restore what has been damaged. That does not make injury harmless, but it does show just how deeply regeneration is woven into their biology. The trait is not only something observed in laboratories. It appears in ordinary aspects of their development. Axolotls can be induced to metamorphose under certain conditions, but they naturally stay in the aquatic juvenile state. This is a subtle but important point. The axolotl is not absolutely incapable of transformation. Rather, its normal life pattern is to remain in the neotenic form. That means the famous external gills and aquatic body are not signs of incomplete development in the ordinary sense. They are the standard form of adult life for this species. Their face makes them appear almost cartoonishly calm, which contrasts with the biological complexity inside them. Many people are first drawn to axolotls because they look gentle, simple, and strangely cheerful. But beneath that soft appearance lies an animal of immense scientific importance, carrying unusual developmental traits and extraordinary regenerative abilities. The contrast between surface charm and deep biological complexity is one reason axolotls are so memorable. Axolotls are mysterious because they seem to have turned perpetual youth into a successful life strategy. In many animals, looking juvenile would suggest incompleteness or immaturity. In the axolotl, it is the fully functional adult condition. This reverses a strong human expectation about growth and change. The animal shows that maturity does not always require adopting the familiar adult form we expect. Sometimes remaining youthful in appearance is exactly what works best. They are also one of the rare animals whose scientific value became enormous, partly because their bodies repair themselves so well. Many species are studied because they are convenient, abundant, or easy to breed. The axolotl is important for a different reason. It offers a glimpse into biological possibilities that humans find especially compelling. Every limb regrown, every tissue repaired, suggests that vertebrate bodies may be capable of more healing than we normally imagine. Okapis live only in the wild in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This limited distribution immediately makes them special, because it means their natural story is tied to one particular region of Central Africa. They are not scattered across multiple continents or broad open landscapes. Their home is a specific forested part of the world, and that geographic restriction contributes strongly to their mystery. A large mammal can remain unfamiliar if it lives in dense habitat far from ordinary tourist routes. Although their striped legs suggest zebras, okapis are the only living relatives of giraffes. This is one of the most surprising facts about them. At first glance, many people assume they must be some sort of forest zebra or horse-like animal. but biologically they belong with giraffes, not zebras. This disconnect between appearance and relationship is part of what makes the okapi so memorable. It looks like one thing and is, in a deeper sense, another. They are often called the forest giraffe. This nickname is useful because it captures both their relationship and their habitat. Unlike the long-necked giraffe of open savannas, the okapi lives in dense rainforest, where a shorter neck and more compact body make more sense. The name helps people understand that this is not a strange zebra, but a rainforest member of the giraffe family, adapted to a completely different style of life. Their thick, oily fur helps keep them dry in rainforest conditions. A wet forest may sound lush and welcoming, but for an animal living there daily, moisture is a practical challenge. Fur that resists soaking helps maintain comfort and body function. The okapi's coat is therefore not just beautiful. It is part of a survival system suited to humid, rainy, shaded environments where surfaces are frequently damp and vegetation is dense. Okapis have long, dark tongues used to strip leaves from branches. This is a strong sign of their giraffe relationship, because giraffes also have long, prehensile tongues adapted for feeding. The tongue helps the okapi handle vegetation efficiently, reaching and pulling leaves in a controlled way. It is one of those features that may not stand out instantly in photographs, but once you know about it, the animal's connection to giraffes becomes easier to see. They eat large amounts of vegetation every day. A large browsing mammal needs a steady intake of plant material to support its body. Forest leaves, buds, and other vegetation become the main fuel of daily life. The okapi's quiet existence depends on a constant relationship with the plants around it. Rather than hunting or scavenging, it moves through the forest as a selective eater of greenery, turning dense vegetation into sustenance. They also visit mineral-rich spots, including riverbed clay for salts and nutrients. This is a reminder that plant food alone may not always provide everything an herbivore needs. Many herbivorous animals seek out mineral sources to balance their diet, and the okapi is no exception. Riverbed clay and similar sites can become important nutritional supplements. It is a subtle behavior, but one that reveals how carefully animals may need to manage the chemistry of their diet. Okapis have 4 stomachs, like giraffes and cattle. This is another clue to their place among ruminant-like plant eaters. A multi-chambered stomach helps process fibrous vegetation by allowing it to be broken down more thoroughly. Leaves may look simple to us, but turning them into useful energy is a complex job. The okapi's digestive system shows how deeply herbivorous life depends on internal specialization. The stripes on their legs may help young follow their mothers through dense forest. In thick vegetation, where visibility is broken by stems, shadows, and filtered light, old markings can serve purposes beyond simple camouflage. The stripes may help create recognizable patterns that calves can track, while moving through a visually cluttered environment. This gives the okapi's striking appearance a practical side, linking beauty and survival in a subtle rainforest setting. Their large ears rotate to monitor the sounds of the forest. In dense woodland, hearing is often extremely important. A turning ear can help locate movement, detect danger, and interpret the hidden life around the animal. The okapi's ears are therefore not just large. They are active listening tools, constantly sampling the acoustic world of the rainforest, where sightlines are limited, and sound may provide the first warning of what is nearby. Okapis are shy and usually solitary. This helps explain why such a large animal remained poorly known to outside science until relatively recently. A solitary forest mammal that avoids attention, moves quietly, and lives in dense habitat can be much harder to document than an equally large animal of open plains. Solitude and shyness combine with geography to create real obscurity. The okapi is not mythical. it is simply hard to encounter. Their secretive habits helped them remain unknown to Western science until the 20th century. This is one of the most remarkable things about the okapi. It is not a tiny insect or hidden cave animal. It is a substantial mammal, yet its forest environment and elusive behavior allowed it to remain largely outside Western scientific awareness for a long time. That fact alone gives it a special place among mysterious creatures. Males generally have short skin-covered horns called ossicones, while females usually do not. This feature links the okapi clearly to giraffes, which also have ossicones. The horns are not large in the way many antelope horns are, but they are an important anatomical marker of relationship and identity. In the okapi, they contribute to a face that is both gentle-looking and oddly distinctive once you notice the details. Their blue-gray tongues are long enough to reach the eyes and ears. This sounds almost unbelievable, but it serves a practical purpose. Such a long, flexible tongue can help with grooming as well as feeding. Being able to clean parts of the face that would otherwise be difficult to reach is useful in a humid forest environment. It is one more example of how the okapi's body combines unexpected traits with real everyday function. Despite their large size, okapis move quietly through thick vegetation. That quietness is part of their forest identity. In dense habitats, clumsy or noisy movement could attract attention or make foraging less effective. The okapi's ability to pass through the undergrowth with relative silence suits its shy, solitary nature. It is a large animal, but not one that announces itself loudly. Much of its life seems shaped around not being noticed. Their appearance feels puzzling because the front half looks giraffe-like, while the hindquarters suggest a zebra. This mixed impression is one reason so many people remember okapis after seeing them once. The animal seems assembled from several familiar patterns, yet it is entirely real and internally consistent. That tension between familiarity and surprise lies at the heart of the okapi's mystery. It looks almost invented, but every part of it makes ecological sense. They live in one of the most biologically rich but politically challenging forest regions in Africa. That context matters because conservation does not happen in a vacuum. Protecting a species depends not only on biology, but also on human stability, access, governance, and safety. The okapi's fate is tied to a region of great ecological importance and real human difficulty, which makes research and protection more complicated than the animal's quiet appearance might suggest. Their mystery is partly geographical. A big mammal remained obscure simply because its habitat was dense, remote, and difficult for outsiders to explore. This is an important lesson from the okapi. Sometimes the world hides animals not by making them tiny or subterranean, but by surrounding them with forests so thick and inaccessible that ordinary observation becomes difficult. Geography itself can be a powerful veil. Okapis show that a creature does not need to be monstrous to seem unreal. There is nothing aggressive or frightening about the okapi's mystery. Instead, its strangeness comes from combination, remoteness, and gentle improbability. A striped rainforest relative of the giraffe is already unusual enough to stretch the imagination. The okapi proves that wonder does not need sharp teeth or deep-sea darkness. Sometimes it only needs a quiet forest and an unexpected form. A striped rainforest giraffe relative is strange enough on its own. Even without every extra detail about tongues, ossicones, ears, and habitat, that one description is enough to make most people pause. It sounds like the kind of creature one might expect to exist only in children's illustrations or speculative fiction, yet it is real and alive. The okapi's existence is a reminder that the natural world often outperforms invention simply by being itself. The saola was first recognized by science in 1992 and formally described in 1993, which is astonishing when you remember that it is not a tiny insect, microscopic organism, but a large land mammal. Most people imagine that all large mammals must have been known to science for a very long time. The saola gently reminds us that this is not always true. Even in the modern world, a substantial animal living in the right habitat can remain almost completely hidden from scientific description until very recently. It was discovered in the Annamite Mountains of Laos and Vietnam, a region of forested terrain that is beautiful, rugged, and difficult to study thoroughly. Mountain forests can hide life in a very effective way, especially when vegetation is dense and access is limited. The saola belongs to one of those landscapes where animals can remain more secretive than we might expect. Its discovery tells us that geography still has the power to keep living things out of ordinary human notice. The saola is often nicknamed the Asian unicorn, though it is actually a bovid related to wild cattle rather than any mythical one-horned creature. The nickname does not come from fantasy alone. It comes from the feeling people get when they realize how rare, elegant, and elusive the animal is. A creature can earn a mythical reputation not because it is imaginary, but because it is so difficult to see that it begins to feel almost unreal. It is considered extremely rare and critically endangered. This means the saola is not only mysterious in the romantic sense of being hidden in forests, it is also in real danger. A species can be both wondrous and vulnerable at the same time. In the saola's case, rarity adds urgency. The mystery surrounding it is no longer just about discovery. It is also about survival and whether enough individuals remain for the species to continue. Saola belong to their own distinctive genus, Pseudorix. This tells us that the animal is not simply a slightly unusual version of some already familiar forest antelope or wild cow. It is distinct enough to stand in its own genus, which reflects meaningful biological uniqueness. That taxonomic distinction deepens the sense that the saola is not just rare, but truly special in the broader pattern of mammal diversity. Both males and females carry long, nearly parallel horns. This gives the saola a graceful and unmistakable silhouette. The horns are elegant rather than heavy-looking, and their nearly parallel shape contributes to the animal's unusual beauty. When people imagine why the saola feels so mythical, the horns are a big part of it. They give the animal a calm, symmetrical presence that seems almost too refined for something so rarely seen. Those horns can reach about 50 centimeters, which is long enough to be striking without making the animal seem oversized or burdened by them. Their length helps define the saola's appearance from a distance, creating one of its clearest visual signatures. Horns of that size also remind us that the saola is a substantial forest mammal, not some tiny hidden species that escapes notice simply by being small. The face has striking white markings, and these markings help make the saola especially memorable. In a dim forest setting, facial contrast can be important for recognition, communication, or simply for making the animal visually distinct. The pale markings create a face that feels delicate and refined, which adds to the sense that this is one of the most elegant and elusive large mammals on Earth. Large glands on the muzzle may be important in scent marking or social communication. This means the saola's face is not only visually distinctive, but also functionally active in chemical signaling. In dense forests, scent can carry information where sight is limited. The animal may leave cues for others of its kind without needing direct contact. This makes the saola feel even more like a quiet forest specialist, communicating through traces rather than spectacle. Very few confirmed records have been obtained in recent decades. That fact alone explains much of the saola's almost legendary reputation. In an age of cameras, satellites, and constant documentation, there are still animals for which confirmed records remain exceptionally scarce. The saola is one of them. It is real, named, and scientifically recognized, yet still so seldom recorded that each piece of evidence feels precious. The saola lives in wet evergreen forests rather than open grasslands. This habitat shapes almost everything about its mystery. Open habitats reveal large mammals much more easily, but dense, wet forests do the opposite. They soften visibility, muffle movement, and break the landscape into layers of leaves, trunks, and shadows. A shy animal in such a place can remain hidden with remarkable success. Its rarity is due partly to low density and partly to how inaccessible its habitat is. That combination matters. An animal that is rare but easy to reach may still be well documented, while an animal that is common in an inaccessible place may still be observed more often than expected. The saola sits at a difficult intersection. It appears to exist at low numbers in forests that are hard to search. That makes it one of the most elusive large mammals known. Camera trap images of saola are exceptionally valuable because so few exist. A single image can mean a great deal when direct observation is so rare. In many wildlife studies, cameras capture thousands of images of a species, but for the saola, even a small number of photographs can become major evidence. This gives each record an unusual weight. A quiet forest image becomes not just a picture, but proof of continued existence. The species has not adapted well to captivity, which makes conservation especially difficult. To some endangered animals, breeding or maintaining them in captivity offers a backup plan. The saola does not seem to fit that pattern easily. Its biology, stress responses, or environmental needs make captivity a poor substitute for life in its native forest. That means protecting the habitat itself becomes even more important. One of the main threats is not only direct targeted hunting, but also the enormous number of wire snares set for other animals. This is one of the saddest realities of forest conservation. A rare species does not need to be hunted specifically to be pushed toward disappearance. It can be harmed simply because traps fill the landscape indiscriminately. The saola is vulnerable not only because it is rare, but because it moves through forests that contain widespread hidden danger. Conservation groups have removed tens of thousands of snares from saola habitat. That number gives a sense of the scale of the problem. It also shows that conservation work is often painstaking and physical, involving people walking through forests and removing one snare at a time. The struggle to protect the saola is therefore not abstract. It takes place on the ground, in real terrain, through repeated patient effort. The saola is one of the most mysterious large land mammals on Earth because almost nobody has seen one alive in the wild. That statement is not poetic exaggeration. It is a realistic description of how hidden the species remains. Many people know of tigers, elephants, or mountain gorillas through abundant photos and filmed encounters. The saola is different. Its scarcity in direct human experience gives it a very unusual emotional power. Unlike many famous rare animals, it was not hidden in an ancient text or a half-remembered legend, but in real forests into modern times. This makes the saola especially striking. It is not a creature rescued from folklore by science. It is a real mammal that simply remained obscure because its habitat and behavior allowed it to do so. That kind of hiddenness feels very modern and very ancient at once. Its discovery was a reminder that even large mammals can still surprise science. People often assume that the age of major animal discovery is over, especially for larger species. The saola gently proves otherwise. Under the right conditions, even a substantial hoofed mammal can remain outside formal scientific recognition until very recently. That lesson continues to matter whenever people assume the natural world is already completely inventoried. The saola's mystery today is no longer whether it exists, but whether enough individuals remain to save it. That shift in question is deeply moving. The first mystery was one of discovery. The second is one of survival. We now know the animal is real, graceful, and extraordinary. The quieter, heavier uncertainty is whether the forests still hold enough life for the species to continue into the future. Pangolins are the only mammals covered extensively in hard, overlapping scales. This makes them immediately distinctive among all living mammals. Fur is the usual mammalian covering, and while some mammals have armor-like structures or thick skin, pangolins stand alone in having a body so thoroughly protected by scales. At first glance, many people do not even realize they are mammals. That reaction shows how dramatically pangolins depart from ordinary mammalian expectations. Those scales are made of keratin, the same material found in human fingernails. This detail makes the armor feel both strange and familiar. The scales are not reptile plates in the way many people imagine them. They are built from a material we ourselves carry in a softer and smaller form. The difference lies in structure and arrangement. In pangolins, keratin becomes overlapping armor instead of nails, creating one of the most unusual protective coverings in the mammal world. Pangolins feed mainly on ants and termites. This diet may sound simple, but it shapes nearly every major part of their body. A life centered on social insects means the animal must locate nests, break into them, and gather many small prey efficiently. Pangolins are therefore not general-purpose feeders wandering casually through the landscape. They are specialists built around a very particular and demanding food source. Their tongues are long, muscular, and specialized for reaching deep into nests. A long, sticky tongue is one of the best tools for harvesting many small insects from narrow spaces. The pangolin does not need to bite prey one by one in the usual way. Instead, it extends the tongue into tunnels and chambers, collecting insects with remarkable efficiency. The tongue is so central to the animal's feeding life that it becomes one of its defining anatomical features. They have strong claws for tearing open insect colonies. Ant and termite nests are not easy food containers waiting politely to be opened. They can be built from hard soil, wood, or tightly packed material, and they may contain defensive insects that swarm quickly. Strong claws allow pangolins to break into these structures with force. Once the nest is opened, the tongue takes over. The whole body works as a coordinated system for accessing hidden prey. When threatened, pangolins curl into a tight ball. This is one of the most famous and visually distinctive defensive behaviors among mammals. Instead of running fast or fighting with teeth, the pangolin turns itself into a compact armored shape. Curling protects the soft underside and brings the hard scales outward. It is a defense based on transformation of posture rather than speed or aggression, and it suits the animal's body beautifully. Their scales help protect them from predators and also from the bites of the insects they eat. That dual role is especially elegant. The same armor that discourages larger attackers also helps during feeding among biting, swarming prey. This means the scales are useful in both dramatic and ordinary moments of life. They are not merely emergency protection. They are part of the pangolin's everyday relationship with its world. Pangolins occur in Africa and Asia. So although they are unified by a distinctive body plan and diet, they are not restricted to one single continent. Different species occupy different habitats across these regions, showing that the pangolin form has succeeded in more than one ecological setting. Still, even with this broad geographic spread, pangolins remain hidden from many people because they are secretive, often nocturnal, and not easy to observe directly. All 8 pangolin species are considered threatened with extinction at some level. This gives the entire group a shared fragility. Pangolins are not just biologically unusual. They are also under widespread pressure. When every species in a whole mammalian order faces threat, it tells us that something serious is happening at a broad scale. Their uniqueness makes that vulnerability feel even more significant. Their unusual appearance has made them widely recognizable, even though many people have never seen one in the wild. This is an interesting kind of fame. Pangolins are known through images, documentaries, conservation campaigns, and curiosity, not through common direct experience. Many people recognize the shape of a curled pangolin or the look of its scales, yet would never encounter one naturally. The animal is both famous and hidden at the same time. Pangolins are mostly nocturnal and often solitary. This helps explain why they remain so little known in ordinary life, despite their memorable form. Nocturnal animals belong to hours when humans are less active, and solitary behavior means fewer obvious group movements to notice. A scaled, insect-eating mammal moving quietly at night can remain out of sight, even in landscapes where it still survives. Because they lack teeth, food is swallowed whole and processed later in the digestive tract. This makes their feeding biology even more distinctive. Many mammals depend heavily on chewing, but pangolins do not. Instead, they collect insects rapidly with the tongue and rely on later digestive processes to handle the meal. That means their mouths and jaws are shaped by a very different set of priorities than in most mammals. Their bodies are built more for digging and defense than for speed. This becomes obvious once you think about their daily needs. Pangolins do not need to chase fast prey across open ground. They need to locate nests, tear them open, gather insects, and protect themselves if threatened. A strong body with digging power and armor makes much more sense for that lifestyle than a lean body built for sprinting. A pangolin's walk can look unusual because of the way it carries and uses its claws. Large digging claws are excellent tools, but they are not ideal for ordinary flat-footed walking. So pangolins often move in a way that reflects the compromises of their anatomy. Their gait can look distinctive, almost careful, because the same limbs that open tough insect nests also shape how they travel across the ground. Some species are tree climbers, while others are more terrestrial. This shows that pangolins, although highly specialized, are not all identical in lifestyle. Different species have adapted to somewhat different environments and ways of moving through them. Climbing species and ground-dwelling species still share the same broad insect-eating armored plan, but they express it differently depending on habitat and opportunity. Pangolins are among the most trafficked mammals in the world, which has added urgency to pangolin research and conservation. This tragic fact means that their rarity and uniqueness have not protected them. Instead, they face intense human pressure. Conservationists do not study pangolins only because they are fascinating. They also study them because they are at immediate risk and need informed protection. The mystery of pangolins is partly anatomical. They look like reptilian armor wrapped around a mammal. This first impression is powerful because it confuses ordinary categories. Fur, scales, mammal, armor, tongue, claws. The pangolin gathers these elements into a form that seems almost assembled from different animal ideas. Yet it is perfectly coherent once you understand its ecological role. It is also a mystery of behavior, since pangolins are secretive, mostly active at night, and often hard to observe directly. Even if an animal is visually unforgettable, it can remain poorly known if it moves quietly and largely in darkness. Pangolins do exactly that. Their body catches the imagination, but their lifestyle keeps them hidden. That balance between memorable shape and elusive habit is part of what makes them so compelling. Pangolins show how evolution can produce a mammal that seems almost custom-built for one narrow diet and one defensive trick. Their bodies are not generalized. They are deeply focused. Ants and termites provide the food. Scales and curling provide the main protection. Strong claws and a long tongue complete the feeding system. It is a clear example of nature shaping an animal toward a very specific way of living. A scale-covered ant-eating mammal that rolls into a living pine cone is one of the clearest examples of how real animals can seem stranger than fiction. The pangolin does not need embellishment to sound improbable. Its very existence is enough. That is part of the quiet beauty of mysterious creatures. They remind us that the natural world is not only grand and vast, but also wonderfully inventive in its details. And as the mind grows quieter, it is gentle to remember that so many of these creatures live far from the bright center of ordinary human life. Some drift in dark oceans. Some hide beneath mountains. Some move softly through wet forests at night. Their mystery is not loud. It rests in distance, rarity, and the patient ways they fit into places we seldom see. Many of them are not mysterious because they are violent or dramatic, but because they belong to worlds shaped by darkness, depth, silence, or secrecy. The deep sea, the cave, the rainforest, the hidden stream, each of these places softens the edges of certainty. The animals within them become reminders that the planet still holds corners where life continues quietly beyond our usual attention. There is something calming in the idea that reality itself still contains hidden things. Not hidden in a supernatural sense, but hidden by geography, shadow, and the simple limits of human reach. A giant squid, a saola, an ome, or a pangolin all show this in different ways. They tell us that wonder does not have to be invented. It can simply be found where we have not looked enough. Even the strangest bodies begin to feel natural when placed back into their true hose. Transparent heads make sense in dim water. External gills make sense in permanent aquatic youth. Armor makes sense where defense must be immediate. Long fingers, rotating eyes, spiral shells, and sensory bills all become calm answers to real environmental questions. Nature often seems most mysterious just before it becomes understandable. And perhaps that is one of the softest things science offers: the chance to move from surprise into understanding without losing wonder along the way. To learn what a creature is, how it lives, and why it is shaped the way it is, does not make it less beautiful. Very often it makes it more beautiful because the strangeness begins to feel deeply connected rather than random. The hidden creatures of the world do not hurry to explain themselves. They simply go on living in deep trenches, volcanic slopes, underground waters, mountain forests, and quiet rivers. They ask for no attention. Yet when we finally notice them, they widen our sense of what life can be. They make the world feel older, larger, and more intricate than it did before. Some of them have survived through immense stretches of time. Some were only recently recognized. Some are now so fragile that protecting them has become urgent. But all of them carry the same quiet lesson. The living world is far richer than the familiar surface of daily life suggests. Beyond the ordinary, there are still forms of life that seem to rest right at the edge of imagination. And now, with those hidden forests and deep waters drifting softly in the background of thought, it is enough to let the mind become still. The creatures can remain where they belong, moving slowly, resting in darkness, gliding beneath pressure, or waiting in silence beneath leaves and stone. The ocean can darken. The cave can cool. The forest can grow quiet. Somewhere far away, unseen lives continue in their own calm rhythms, untouched by hurry, untouched by noise, carried onward by instinct, water, earth, and time. And you can rest here too, with nothing more to solve, nothing more to follow, only the soft knowledge that the world is full of quiet wonders, and that for tonight, it is enough simply to drift among them,